What do you want to do, by the way, for the intro? Because I'll still use our like standard YouTube intro. We could just talk over it. It's fine. And then we just fade in 30 seconds in.
Yeah. I think that's absolutely fine. Let's go easy on ourselves. It's August.
Yeah, it's August. All right. August. In 3, in 7, in 25, 2. Oh, no, wait. We're not doing that this week. Hello, and welcome to Pull to Open. Normally, an ongoing quest to watch all of Doctor Who in deliciously random order. I'm Pete Pachal.
And I'm Chris Taylor. And yes, we do normally go on a random quest. But you know what? Even random questers get summer vacations. And that's what we've been on when we parked our TARDIS recently at Pete's backyard, the Long Island, well, a very distant backyard, but still a backyard.
I've got a big backyard here on the East Coast. Yes.
The Long Island Doctor Who convention, and I'll just give you this tease for the twist at the end. I did not expect that news would be broken there, but we did have a lot of fun.
We got some. We did. So we had a great time at the convention. Obviously, it was guest laden, I'll say. Yes. They had everyone from Daphne Ashbrook and Yi Chi-So from the TV movie to the headliners. Colin Baker and Nicola Bryant were there. Yes. And I have evidence that I was there getting some signatures from them on my classic Doctor Who magazines here, which featuring them in the cover. Yeah, so that was amazing. Both fabulous people.
You got them. They're both looking amazing for their age. And Fraser Hines was there. So on the 40th anniversary of the Two Doctors, which we have covered on our Random Quest, go back and listen to that episode. They talked a little bit about the shooting of that show, but it was fun. I wasn't expecting that sort of level of energy. We should say, did a TikTok live.
We did
from the costume contest.
Pull to Open on TikTok, all one word. Check it out. We might want to post that, I guess, because it's not technically posted on our channel. So maybe I'll do that right after this, or at the very least, put it on YouTube. But there is some stuff that we got from Long Island Who, and we're going to get to that in a second. But first, I want to show the other stuff that I got, like some merch. Hey. Finally, slowly completing my Sonic collection. A little bit of a Jody screwdriver there. And now our official uniforms for Pull to Open now have insignia.
That's right. That's right.
We both got one of these.
And we now understand the importance of ribbons at Doctor Who cons, so we may be making plans to get some of those. Also, big shout out to Felix Eddy. Thank you for the pack of wonderful cards of the Doctor and companions dressed as cats. That's going to be very popular with many fan friends. Let's get to the main meat of this episode, which is interviews.
Right. So we spent a good deal of time at the convention talking to a lot of people who have worked on the show, who have acted on the show. There were just so many guests. Long Island Who is definitely one of these bigger American-bound conventions in terms of the number of talent they just get out. And so we talked to several people. First, Chris, why don't you tell us about some of the folks that have been in New Who that you talked to?
Yes, well, first of all, I want to give a big shout out to our Long Island fixer, Irene, who helped us, even though this was a last-minute landing, y'all. We parked the TARDIS just out of randomizer mode the very last second. It crashed in like it did on Skaro. We hit the wall, we bounced out. They very kindly set us up with a lot of last-minute interviews. And the one that I least expected to yield any news was with an actress named Annette Badland. And if you know her from Doctor Who circles, you know that she was in both all of the Slitheen episodes, or two of the Slitheen episodes. She was the one in Boomtown. She was, she's got to have dinner with Chris Eccleston. If that wasn't enough, it was like the first real dinner in Doctor Who. Like, it was a fabulous scene. So we talked a little bit about that. What I didn't expect was that she would break some news. And it's a news about her playing a new character in Big Finish that has recently cropped up in the actual show. And I'm going to leave it to her. It's not a new character.
It's a character.
A very not new character that she talks about there. And, I don't know if she intended to reveal this news. I don't know if she just let it slip. She was a pretty good actor if she intended to do this. But I think we just got ourselves a little Big Finish scooplet. Yes, but have a listen to that interview to find out more.
Coming up right away. It's the first one in the queue. We got a few more, though, and one of the people we talked to there was a writer who you might know. He's written some Big Finish adventures. He's definitely been involved with the show during the Wilderness years, and it's Nev Fountain.
Yes.
Who was...
Author of Death Comes to Time.
Right, and partner of Nicola Bryant, as it turns out. And he gave us a lot of, well, I'll say, unbridled opinions, which was great.
Oh, my.
You know how folks who are involved with the show are often measured in their criticism, shall we say.
Yes.
Nev was not. Nev was very, let it all hang out, which was great. We got to nerd out with him a little bit. And it was a very lively conversation. So I was super grateful for the time.
I would say I loved interviewing all of our interviews. You're all number one to me. You're all my favorite space babies. But I've got to say, most of them had not seen the new season of Doctor Who.
They're busy.
They were very busy, which is fine. But you're like we're talking to Turlo. We'll get to him, and it's like, can we talk to you about Sutek, please? No, the fact he was wrapped around your TARDIS the whole time. The Black Guardian somehow got through. No, he was not up for that. But Nev was, and that was the delightful thing for me about that interview, was that he did not hold back on new season opinions, on opinions about Chris Chibnall versus RTD2. He, of course, knows RTD of old, and I brought up to him an old magazine interview he did that we happened to look at randomly from 2002, from the Death Comes to Time era, where he was basically saying that it's going to be like, me or Mark Gatiss or a few other people or Russell T Davies are going to bring Doctor Who back.
Called it.
Fantastic.
Perhaps caused it.
Yes. But also, we get into that whole debate about whether a script editor-producer combo is better than a showrunner. Do showrunners have too much power? So,
lots of stuff. No spoilers.
Yeah. But my goodness, he was not shy. One of the least shy interviewees in terms of coming forward with his opinions. Almost a bit Steve Jobs-esque, I felt.
Well, there was another actress that you got a chance to talk to, and I'm not sure if she was shy or not, but we basically she was under the wire.
She was camera shy, I'll say that.
A little bit.
But yes. But that was a great shame because she was looking fantastic. I got to say, as we spoke outdoors, you'll hear a little bit of background noise in that one. Outdoors at the Long Island Who convention. It was Miss Jacqueline King who plays Donna Noble's mum, Sylvia. And
nice.
She's delightful, and she hands
less
me,
naggy in real life.
Yes, I think this is after I hit record, but she handed me a fan that she'd gotten at a recent wedding, and first of all, I was like, they still invite you to weddings after the runaway bride. But
I got that. She handed a fan to a fan.
A fan to yes. She's like, here's my this is my biggest fan. No, we didn't say that, but she's delightful. She talked a lot about something I've had in my mind, and I won't spoil her answer on this, but what I guess we've all got our mind with the spin-off coming off. How do you explain away 14? As being retired,
of course,
living with the nobles, living with her as the matriarch, and then still not, going on adventures when the Earth needs it.
More 14 attention. Yeah. So we need, what is going on? It's throwing the whole universe through a loop. See what happens. But yeah, we also got to talk to a few other actors. There was Terry Molloy, who you might know as Davros, or one of them. So he played Davros in the classic series in the 5th, 6th, and 7th Doctor era. And also reprised his role more than a few times on Big Finish adventures, which many of which I've listened to, and it was really delightful to nerd out with him about it. Like, of all the people we talked to, he might have been the most nerdy. I definitely gave even Nev Fountain a run for his money on his enthusiasm for the show, the role, the things around the role. We got some video of it, and I'm going to tell you, if you like my little bit here with this Sonic, he's got something like 10 times better, which is insane. So check that out.
He's got some special Sonics. Terry Molloy is kind of like a kindly. He's the word avuncular comes to mind if you've not met him at a con. He's absolutely delightful. But he gave
good friend of Colin Baker's too.
Great friend of Colin Baker's. They did so many bits together at the cabaret, and he delighted us with a Davros impression, which is fantastic. And also talking about Davros's chair. He really wasn't having it.
I know.
Unlike Peter Capaldi, he was not having that chair.
Yeah, he had some thoughts on the Capaldi adventure.
Yes, and on the
Scala
chair,
there.
and on the chair controversy over Davros. We get into that.
We definitely do.
Enjoy that one. And then after Terry, we have another not on video piece with Turlo himself, Mr. Mark Strickson, who talks about gluing his eyelids. No, his eyebrows. Sorry about that. No, that would have been news. And having his hair spray painted for Turlo. I don't think we ever knew that one.
He had some really cool thoughts on where Turlo might be right now, and I really kind of want to see them realized. I won't spoil them, but he is definitely one of the folks who is not up to speed on the new series. But I also it was the one interview I'd really shook me into reality. Oh yeah, our lives might revolve around Doctor Who now, but the current, a lot of people who used to be on the show, their lives don't really revolve around the show, even though they are happy to do conventions and stuff like this. So, mad respect for Mark, who is now a producer, lives in New Zealand, and is really, really busy producing things. So that's awesome. Good on him.
But he did say he'd be delighted to come back to the show, and wait till you hear what he had to say about where Turlo might be in the post-Planet of Fire future. We'll say, Big Finish, call us after you listen to that bit.
Absolutely. And then we'll round things out with another interview with one of the writers who's been a writer for Doctor Who for a long time. It's John Peel. And I am kind of... I'm almost like a fan of him personally. I'm kind of an inadvertent fan, I guess, and I don't mean that in a bad way. It's just I've gotten so many John Peel books and really love them all. Like one of the ones that really stood out to me was the Gallifrey Chronicles, which is kind of one of these big hardcover things that Peter Haining used to put out. So he put out one around 1988, and it has all this sort of speculation about things behind the scenes, and I really see it as a precursor to the current fan era, where everyone just feels like they have license to speculate and put it on podcasts. And if John Peel had a podcast in 1988, that's what it would be called, the Gallifrey Chronicles, and it would be mad good. But he also wrote novels for Evil of the Daleks and The Power of the Daleks and a few other things. So it was great to get his sort of view of Who, which has spanned several decades, just like ours.
You know what, Pete? I think we need to talk about this because I think Moffat invented the War Doctor, right, to give us this idea of a Doctor who, what the Doctor was doing while the show was off the air. I think we need to invent a War Doctor podcast starring John Peel and just either record it retroactively and have him talk about the Doctor Who news of the week, or just speculate on what it contained, or just occasionally throw references into this lost podcast.
I'm in.
From the John Hurt years. Remember the John Hurt years? They were great.
The John Hurt years. John Hurt.
I love
a couple of hours.
He broke Tom Baker's record. He was on the air for all those years. No, we're not going to gaslight you on that. But I will say, John, I really wanted him to have seen the new season because he brought back Susan in the books, right? He was the first one to
Legacy of the Daleks. FYI, if you want to check it out.
Desperately wanted to talk to him about the Sutek misdirect and whether we should have Susan Foreman back in the show. But couldn't spoil him. So,
we talked a little bit about Susan, though, so that was okay.
Yes, he did.
All right, folks. We could probably stop talking at some point and let you guys just listen to the interviews we did. I will apologize in advance for some of the audio. We were shooting under fire, as it were, and we were outside and inside and going back and forth with various locations and equipment mishaps. But most of the audio is intact, if not great. And we weren't able to get video for everyone. So enjoy some photos that we took at the convention. During those, you people on YouTube or watching Spotify video podcasts, you people just listening, obviously don't worry about that.
Shout out to Nev Fountain's book, The Fan Who Knew Too Much, which has just gone on sale. And
100%.
Also, once again, thank you to Irene, who makes some surprise appearances in some of these interviews. But that's an extra little Easter egg for you, special Pull to Open fans.
All right, let's get to it. As always, you can follow us on social. Just Google it, Pull to Open or Pull to Open 63. Leave a review if you like what you hear, particularly for this episode. We'd love to do more of these. We'd love to do more conventions and maybe do some more interviews, even outside of conventions. So if you like it, let's hear from you, and maybe we'll do it.
Give us a thumbs up or thumbs down on whether we should do Pool to Open in the summer months, where we just maybe we can make this into a cruise, Pete. We just have a lot of Doctor Who fans and companions.
I want to do it for the dad joke alone. Let's just keep it going. How many variations of Pool can we do?
Indeed.
All right.
Well, that's how we're spending our next summer vacation. Here's how we spent this one. Roll it. Yeah, we'll just keep it casual and light. So, Annette Badland, thank you for joining us.
It's nice to join you on the sofa.
Yes, on the sofa, chat. My new chat show.
Yeah.
On the sofa, we'll just put some ferns on either side.
Why not?
It'll be a chat show. So we do a podcast called Pull to Open. We go randomly through Doctor Who history, choosing a random story each week. I regret to say that we've not been to Boomtown yet.
It's a mistake.
I know. Blame the randomizer, not us. I would love to go there. I actually consider that episode kind of a quiet classic.
Yes.
It's something. It was something very new for Doctor Who, wasn't it? I don't know how much did you know the show before?
Well, I started with William Hartnell.
Oh boy!
So, yes. I'm way back at the beginning, and Patrick Troughton. So Russell and Phil and Chris really loved the show when they were recreating it. And I think that shows. I think because they understood the history and the fandom, they could write very well for it. But Russell has such a big mind. He's a big man in all ways. He's big, generous-hearted, intelligent, emotionally intelligent. And Boomtown was a gift to me. Because they don't shoot the first episode first with something, especially if it's a relaunch. They leave it so that the actors are au fait with their characters, the cogs are all oiled, and they know how long prosthetics are going to take. So we shot the first 2 episodes I'm in were the first 2 episodes they ever shot.
Oh, my goodness.
And Chris and I had a scene in the Houses of Parliament through a doorway. And Russell just thought, oh, this is interesting. I could develop this. So he wrote Boomtown. And it plopped onto the mat around Christmas time. And it runs the gamut. You know, you've got lines like dinner in bondage, works for me, to an alien sitting on the loo lonely and unhappy. And the character was the first person who took the Doctor to task.
Yes.
About the Doctor's morals. And, that restaurant scene, which is great fun.
And that's the part that sticks in the brain, the restaurant scene, because it's unlike anything else in the show up until that point. Or indeed since. I can't think of many times when the Doctor's just sat down and had a meal.
And it's proper drama, isn't it? Because it's not about effect. It's not... It's... 2 beings.
It's getting
it's real
empathize.
Down to the nitty gritty. What we are trying to unpick with drama a great deal.
Yes.
And I think what also happens with the fan base, how they relate to characters, and I think we're all aliens. I think we're all strange to one another. We all have our own foibles. So sci-fi and aliens and strange beings, you go, well, I might fit in okay because, they're in this realm, this sphere. And I think that's fascinating that you can put 2 entities together and just let them find out about one another. And,
there are examples to our drama, none are coming to mind right now, right? But the idea of taking someone you think of as a villain and then empathizing, deliberately empathizing, just exposing yourself to them more. And then that, in a way, makes you rethink, for example, the whole history of Doctor Who. Like, if the Doctor had just gone out to dinner with the Daleks in the first place, or maybe that's taking it a little bit too far.
Yes.
I actually did have an interaction with a younger fan who encountered the Daleks for the first time. She's Gen Z, and her reaction was, "Oh, they're they're kind of just sort of, they're a bit neurodivergent. They're a bit,
Yes.
they're just, they're a bit bossy and they don't really know how to relate or talk, but they're still, and she found them cute. And I was like, that's a very interesting case of empathy. Maybe not everyone will find them that cute, but like even the Daleks, right? There's something to empathize about them, and there have been episodes since Boomtown that have done that. But yeah, so that really is an extraordinary task.
But Russell's a fantastic writer, and he's one of the few writers I've worked with that a line can be comedic to begin with and turn to absolute pathos. Not a long scene like that, but a single, 2-sentence communication can just shift.
Right.
Another
shift
area.
Your sympathies a little bit, which is exactly what we need. But it wouldn't have necessarily worked, without a really good actor in that role, right? And also someone who can embody the villain, but then switch it, right?
Yeah.
And you've been in so many things.
Yes, I'm very old.
You've run the gamut. I mean, I was looking through your Wikipedia page and realizing I must have seen you in so many of these things, from like Bergerac to you were on EastEnders.
Yes, I went and did a stint on that.
So I must have
just started with Naked Civil Servant.
Naked Civil Servant, yeah. So many iconic things on British television, and Ted Lasso most recently, of course. And you know what? It wasn't until this convention that I put you together with
all my bits.
Yes, yeah. Well, so the Ted Lasso and Boomtown, which is where I mostly know you from. But do you feel like you have that sort of that quality of being a woman with 1,000 faces?
I love the variety, and I like the different media. I have friends who go, theatre friends who go, no, I wouldn't do television. Whatever. And Fiona Shaw, I work with in the theatre, and she did say to me, you must stop doing this children's television. And for me, at the time, it was the most dedicated, interested, committed, imaginative area that I worked in. And if you get good writing, I have 45-year-old men who run up to me in the street and say, I used to run home from school to see you in Happy Families. And Alan Alberg's a great writer, and it was adapted from that. So it's great storytelling.
Yes, from a business perspective.
And then Fiona was in Harry Potter, so...
she changed her mind pretty quickly, I'm sure, when the check cleared.
Yes.
Yeah, but also, like, it's a smart business move, just from a purely calculated standpoint, right? If you get your fans while they're young, then they run up to you in the street.
Yes, I hadn't thought about that. But what I did think about I thought your point might be, because I worked in all aspects of media, I am invited back in more often because I have done radio, I have done audio stuff, and I didn't do voiceover work, so I'm only just getting to voiceovers for gaming and things. And that was a revelation because they are extraordinary and beautiful and not what I anticipated. Right. But because I've, done film and all the rest of it, I think more work comes back because I have done all the media.
And they know that you're not, you can do these many things, right? I mean, you don't feel you've ever been in danger of being typecast.
No. I would hate to be I'd like to be the beautiful leading lady, but not all the time. I couldn't. The variety for me is the writing and what that can provoke and where you discover that. I mean, in EastEnders, I was meant to be a good character, maybe a pearly queen. And I did a scene with Tim West who in the story I'd been in love with, and he'd married my sister, so I wasn't very happy. And she was certainly a very unhappy and vengeful person. And he was watching television, and I just walked in and picked up the remote control and turned the television off, told him what I thought about him, and put the television back on and walked out. And I think the writers, because they respond to what you give them, thought, "Ooh, she can be nasty." And suddenly I took a really dark journey.
Yes. And it's funny because your Ted Lasso character is much more of a sort of an EastEnders.
Oh, yes.
Almost a stereotype, right?
Yeah.
Much more lighthearted.
But she's matriarchal. That's what Jason always wanted. You know, the matriarch of the piece. And someone they can come to is sort of, they're not there all the, but it tended to be Jason and Brendan that came to the pub. The team came once. Right. Hannah visited, and but the iconic the darts match, was there, and just wonderful stuff.
That must have been such a fun role, because that's you do get to clip on the ear a bit.
Yes, but I think she's like a lioness, and she's going to give you a tough time and test you. But once you get into her heart, she's going to fight tooth and nail for you. She won't give up on anyone. And I think she's been there, done it. You never learn about her background. There is a secret that I don't think, and I'm not going to tell you.
Oh, no.
We'll save that for the Ted Lasso podcast. Yeah. It's, from her past, and only Jason and I knew. So,
I love that. I love that. It's like the signature on the inside of the Macintosh, so you'll never see it. But knowing that it's there makes all the difference. Yeah. So back to your Doctor Who character ended up in Torchwood. Yes.
Yes.
And that was on the strength of the performance of Boomtown, is that?
Yeah.
And then, forgive me, it's been a long time since I watched Torchwood.
It was an audio. It was for Big Finish.
Okay.
So,
which is so much easier.
Yes. Well, cheaper.
Yeah. But also a day. A couple of days. Mm-hmm.
But we had a great time, Indira and I, and we wondered if there could be a series with our two characters vying against one another, or sometimes colluding. We'll see.
Well,
Big Finish is very responsive to new ideas.
Yes, we have about 5 new ideas for Big Finish per show. And we need to turn it into a segment of Big Finish, call us. But Big Finish, call Annette. She's ready. We're ready for the spin-off. It's going to happen. I mean, we are now getting more spin-offs. We're getting the...
they're terribly popular.
Yes.
And I played the Toymaker for them, and, it's great to revisit those things.
Hang on, you were the Toymaker. This is an area
I've been
I
the
don't know
Toymaker
about.
recently, Maybe it hasn't gone out yet.
Oh, wow. Whoa, okay. You heard it here first. To open the Toymaker.
That needs editing out.
So it may be another Toymaker.
Yes.
It's not a celestial one.
Pinocchio, and what was his name?
Geppetto.
Geppetto.
Geppetto. No, that's cool.
Geppetto.
Well, no, I'm just saying female
Geppetto.
version. Yes.
Yeah.
That's what we'll call
I just
her.
got it all wrong.
That'll be the code name.
Yeah.
Wink, wink. Wow. Okay. Good. Thank you for not revealing that.
No.
Good job.
I wouldn't dream of it.
Yes. Okay. Not going to ask about that, but wow. Yes, there is so much opportunity in the Doctor Who universe, isn't it?
And there's another series they're about to make that I'm involved in, which are also characters that the audience will know from another being, another manifestation.
Oh my goodness! You're just all over Doctor Who. Wow! I feel like you're just going to regenerate on the couch right now.
Yes, I might. Yes. You never know. I might unzip my forehead.
Wow, that's quite an image. Mm-hmm. Did you have to do anything special for that role to inhabit?
Well, I was never in the suit. They were big, tall guys.
Yes.
So they'd come off exhausted, and we'd take their heads off, and you'd just see a pair of desperate eyes and a sweaty forehead, and we'd give them water or a cigarette, whichever they preferred, and they'd put the head back on. And the only thing I wore was the arm. Yes. Which was very heavy for me because they were made for men. So my fingers only just touched the controls. So I had to practice a lot because I had to grab Billy by the throat, and they weren't going to risk me suddenly grabbing her face or pulling her ear off.
I imagine there's a lot of insurance on Billy's face, especially. Be careful about how you strangle her.
Yes.
I feel like we can take a lot of
Gently.
these sentences out of context and make some great clips. But okay, so you just had the prosthetic arm, and so maybe just a little bit of practicing.
Yes.
Maybe lifting
keep swinging
pints.
that. Back in the pub now.
Yes, exactly. Mixing the two roles here, but good exercise.
Yeah.
Yes. Because it was the right arm, and
It was.
assuming,
Yes.
strong right arm.
Yeah.
Well, wow. I think our time is
Is that
shortly coming to an end.
You'll understand there are other people in the room who are watching us and timing us.
That's right. The Big Finish people are coming after us right now.
Ninjas we need to run.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate it, and look forward to seeing you or hearing you in whatever capacity, whatever version of whatever character. Yes, that's very exciting. Looking forward to it.
Thank you.
All right. Well, Nev
here we
Fountain,
are.
yes, thank you for joining us now.
It's an absolute pleasure. I like sitting down in small rooms.
Sitting down at Doctor Who conventions is a good time.
That's my hobby.
That's awesome. Well, welcome to Pull to Open and chatting with us.
Thank you for joining us. And we are a random podcast, goes randomly through Doctor Who history, and we're about to do Planet of Spiders.
Right.
And I often look through Doctor Who magazine to see what's what is coming up here. But do you remember this article about Death Comes to Time?
I do. I remember that very much. I remember wearing a little red waistcoat and sitting in my office and looking a little bit stout. Yes, I remember.
Yes, there you go.
That's me with looking pensive.
I would say looking no different, looking not a day younger.
23 years in the past.
Wow.
Different time.
Death has indeed come to town.
Yes. Well, you also saying that it's sort of at a very interesting point in Doctor Who history, because you talk about sort of the, I don't know, for want of a better word, kind of a brat pack of writers who are interested in Doctor Who, Mark Gatiss.
Yes.
And you say, one of us is going to revive Doctor Who, whether it's, Paul Cornell.
Gosh, I am Nostradamus, aren't I?
Yes, because the last one you said was Russell T Davies.
Yeah.
So
you got there first.
Yeah. What are your thoughts looking back on that time and it's a very curious point in Doctor Who history, right?
Well, yeah, Death Comes to Time. It was a bit of a hinge for me because I never thought I'd be writing anything tangential to Doctor Who, because I thought that was a thing happening with other people, and even if it was going to happen, I didn't think it would be. I think they'd kill every other franchise and no one would do anything. It would be like that. So Death Comes to Time was very exciting. It was like being a rock star for 24 hours because we broke the internet when the first episode went out. Mm-hmm. I think that's when the BBC thought, I think we should do something. Well, yeah, it was a long story, and that's all been covered very much in the book about the wilderness years and about how certain people at the top of the BBC got quite impatient with the silly little things we were doing and the little cartoons on the web, and they eventually said, we want this back now. And it was actually less complicated than they thought. So it was an interesting time. I thought I was just going to be doing parodies of Doctor Who on Dead Ringers and silly jokes about it being rubbish. And then suddenly it all went. It was a lot like a picture of one fish eating a bigger fish, because I was at the 40th anniversary convention interviewing Peter Davison and all the script editors, Terence Dix and Chris Bidmead and Eric Saywood. It was a lot of fun. And that was the announcement. And they had McGann there. So, and the announcement that McGann was doing the Shada webcast, I think. Mm-hmm. So McGann was there, which was taking over from our bit of podcasting, and then they announced a new series, and there was the Richard E. Grant thing. That's right. Yes. They had the Richard E. Grant thing.
Right.
So
also
that
newly
was
relevant.
So that was the future of Doctor Who for about 8 minutes, and then they announced there was going to be a new series. So it was like everything was swallowing everything up.
Yes.
So it was like the tectonic plates of Doctor Who were shifting beneath your feet while you were at that convention. So, yeah, very exciting stuff.
Were you aware, speaking of the Richard E. Grant Doctor, were you aware that he was going to pop up in Rogue?
No.
That was a surprise to you?
No, I didn't the Richard E. Grant Ninth Doctor didn't particularly grab me at the time. And so yeah, whatever,
I mean, in the later series, in Rogue, where you see
I saw
him
I saw the face. I think, okay, we're just doing internet conversations on primetime television now. So, okay, put Rishi Grant in there. Fab, do something you want to do.
What do you think they should do with that? What direction should they take that, if anywhere?
Richard E. Grant.
Just bring him back. Just do and call him like another forgotten or hidden doctor.
I'm not really excited by just creating other doctors out of the blue. I think the War Doctor was quite fun to do, but I've got no time for pre-Hartnell doctors. I think Robert Holmes's Morbius thing was a joke. I think I said quite recently on Toby Haydock's podcast, it was Robert Holmes having a laugh, adding a few extra incarnations, then putting a limit on the extra incarnations and pretending Tom Baker was the last body. That was the joke. Because he thought, this has been going for 14 years. It's not going to go any longer. Let's make Tom the last Doctor Who.
Right.
Let's add a few extra ones and say 12's your limit. And it was a joke.
Yep.
And I just don't like it. I think it's just people taking a joke too seriously. And if you want to take little bits and sideways looks seriously, then address the Paul McGann half-human stuff, which no one wants to do, but everyone still love to create new Doctor Who's. I think it's just quite a fanfic thing,
right?
Creating Doctor. It's like what Star Trek's doing, creating extra bits at the start of Star Trek. Why go forward? Just do more creative things. I mean, I like the Pike series, but I thought Discovery was a bit. It's just trying to. I don't know. It's just trying to kind of work a canon and try and. I don't know. It's just.
Well, the same thing is in the Star Wars franchise, right? They're just trying to stitch together the canon so that the latest movies make more sense.
I don't care whether a cartoon character from the Clone Wars is now a real person.
Yes.
It's like Toy Story. Oh, they can move now. I don't care. I mean, I just want stories.
Yeah.
I just want stories. I don't want to address a point. I don't want to end. I don't want an argument on Gallifrey Base to become flesh and appear in the new series. I don't care. I made another point quite recently on Toby Haydock's podcast that Deadly Assassin and Genesis of the Daleks were canon breakers, but everything they did was in service to the drama that they were doing. Everything Terry Nation and Robert Holmes created in those two stories were in service to the story they wanted to take. And things like the Timeless Children was just kind of, let's address this point. Why do you want to address this point? Let's address why the Klingons had different foreheads. Let's address why the Brain and Morbius had other. Who cares? Everyone kept returning to Genesis of the Daleks and Deadly Assassin because it created something really, really interesting with the new stuff they created. And people were angry at the time. Old fans were angry, but they weren't angry for very long because the stuff they created was so cool. They kept trying to remake it. They tried trying to go back to it and remake Genesis of the Daleks and remake The Deadly Assassin. And that's the kind of story you want to do. You're going to go, I want to do a really good Doctor Who story, but there are things in the way that I can't, but I'm going to ignore them. And that's what Robert Holmes did all the way through his tenure as the script editor. Everything was done in service to the story, and I don't care. As I say, Genesis of the Daleks and Deadly Assassin are the two totems of Robert Holmes' time on the show. And they just basically break canon in order to create two fantastic stories. And no one talks about the continuity anymore about those stories because they are fantastic stories. Right. You can't talk about anything but continuity when you look at The Timeless Children because it's a terrible story. Nothing happens in it. And like The Ultimate Foe as well, I was just talking about that.
Ooh,
you have
the Valyard. We were just,
So the Time Lords destroying the planet Earth. You have the Doctor's future self trying to destroy him. It's a multi-Doctor story where there's a Doctor who's a villain. And I think whether planning or just lack of courage made a very, very exciting canon-breaking story into a less interesting story. But there was potential there. I don't think it was as bad as The Timeless Children actually running away from any drama it might create. But there were compromises. I think JNT was a bit cautious in that time before he threw caution to the wind for Sylvester McCoy's time, and after he really wanted to shake things up during Christopher Bidmead's time. So it was a very cautious time for him. But I thought if he just let it go and actually said, this is the next Doctor. The Valeyard is the 7th Doctor and he wants to destroy the 6th Doctor. That would have been absolutely brilliant. The Time Lords have destroyed the Earth. What are we going to do about it? And all that drama is there and it's just floating in this courtroom and nothing happens with it. But I think that's due to politics and about being worried about being cancelled and all those things. So that's my personal opinion.
Well, that actually brings us nicely to the most recent story, which is, of course, The Legend of Ruby Sunday and Empire of Death, which is not quite canon breaking. I guess it's kind of canon breaking, but it's definitely has a big sequel component to it and sort of goes back into the original Pyramids of Mars, as well as like every story since, and sort of changes things up. I'd love to get your thoughts on, one, the story itself, but also how is the new series, do you think it's properly balancing the idea of, taking advantage of the 60 years, the rich 60 years of the show, but also, balancing that with sort of new adventures with this new Doctor? Is it doing it in a pretty good way?
I watched the new series and I enjoyed it. I have no problem with the individual episodes. I think, was it 73 Yards?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's fantastic. And I thought the one set in the virtual reality where the woman turns out to be racist to the end of it.
Yeah,
it's great.
Bubble, yeah.
I really get annoyed when people say, well, it's a bit like, what's the other series? Charlie Rooker's thing.
Oh, Black Mirror. Yeah, it was.
Black Mirror is hardly originals, but I think that's it was a very good Doctor Who story. Before Black Mirror, Doctor Who did stories like that.
Yes.
So I thought I had no problems with the individual episodes. I think I still have a problem getting to grips with the actual Doctor, because I don't think there's a lot of psychology there, which you expect from a modern TV series. Back in when we started with Eccleston and Tennant, Russell was wanting to make him sort of like the guy next door and make him more approachable, which is fine, which is a good approach. I quite like that more than the lonely god angle. Right. But they balanced it out with this PTSD business about the Time War, which made it more interesting. I don't know if this Doctor has a psychology or has a character that I can get to grips with yet. I've watched 9 episodes and I'm still trying to get the show to give me something about this Doctor that interests me. Ironically, I feel that the 5th Doctor and a lot of the classic Doctors had more character development in their first series than this one. And I expect from a contemporary television show to give me more progression. Right. And I don't think I've got flashes of it. I got him being very sad that he couldn't help this girl, and I got him in love a little bit for 20 minutes. But I'm not getting enough of the Doctor. And I think I love Russell's writing so much. I think he pitched the show so well when he started. I would have died if it was like a Virgin New Adventures, because it's so pompous and adult. I mean, Russell had the right idea completely. But his take on the Doctor, him being just like this guy who happens to have a sonic screwdriver and a TARDIS, I think the Doctor's more of a character than that. And I think I want a bit more of that, a bit more of his alienness. And Stephen Moffat wrote his Doctors as more alien because he starts with something that finds him funny. He's a comedy writer, and he knows there's comedy potential in having an alien in the center of the story. Right. So Matt Smith was alien and didn't understand things, and Peter Capaldi was that in a different way. He likes writing the Doctor as an alien. I think Russell's more cautious about that and wants him to make jokes about Strictly Come Dancing and Bridgerton. That's not really my kind of Doctor, but I'm willing to buy into it if the Doctor is something else and I'm not getting it. He's not got a costume. He's not got a thing. He calls people's babes, which is a bit misogynistic. I'm waiting. Right. I'm waiting for the Doctor. Everything else around it, the stories, I think are great. And it's a bit sad that the 73 Yards was so brilliant when the Doctor's hardly in it, because I want to see more of the Doctor.
Yeah, we had 2 Dr. Light episodes for the first time.
And I'm sure it's going to happen. But I just say it's been 9 episodes now, and I'm waiting for more Doctor Who to happen.
Well, it's interesting to your point earlier of like, you don't want to sort of have it be run like, oh, we're going to sort of have this adherence to canon, and we're going to. I mean, Russell's talked quite openly about the fact that he brought back Sutekh because he thought when he was 12 years old, he was like, oh, Sutekh has clearly jumped onto the TARDIS, right? That's his whole thing, and now he's just making canon what he was thinking when he watched Pyramids of Mars in 1975 as a 12-year-old. And I don't know if you think of that, is that like too much of a temptation? Is that too much sort of focus on canon? Is that,
I don't care. Going back to my original point, I don't care what you do with canon as long as you do something with it. The bi-regeneration thing is a bit odd, but you can see what Russell might want to do with that.
Yeah.
So the Sutekh thing, I don't mind. I don't mind as long as you do something with it. I don't think it's an over-reliance on canon. A lot of people say, when we got to Colin's Sixth Doctor, that it was an over-reliance on canon. I think it was just a disappointment with the way canon was handled. I was 15 when the 22nd series came out, and I enjoyed it for the most part, but the weakest part of it was, not seeing Telos Cybermen on Telos.
Right.
Having the Master come back for no particular reason after a fantastic send-off. History is repeating itself, really, with the new Master.
Yep.
The Sontarans looking a bit weak and rubbery, but it was a solid story. I think, and Revelation was great, but I think there was a problem with canon was there and it was being used, but it wasn't kind of like, it was kind of a half and half. We're using the Cybermen, but we're not doing enough with what went before. And I think that was to do it well, and that's all you can say. I mean, your mileage may vary on the Sutekh stuff, but I was fine with it. I thought it was exciting. It's a television program, and I enjoyed all of it while it was on. I can go back and study it and worry about the puns and worry about this, that, and the other, and the questions that weren't answered. But while it was on the air, I enjoyed watching it, unlike The Timeless Children, which I didn't enjoy anything of. So by that benchmark, great.
So as good television goes, I'll just get this showrunner question in, because of course we now have an American structure where Russell's the showrunner. It's kind of the god of the show. You actually suggested in this when Dan was pitching his own version of Doctor Who, you said that he'd asked you to be the script editor, the old sort of producer script editor breakdown. Do you think that now? Do you think that would work better, or do you prefer the showrunner concept?
Well, what Dan basically asked me to do was to look at the continuity and point a few things out. My role became larger when I read the first episode, and I thought, we have time, we can change things and make them better. So I made a lot of suggestions to Dan, who forwarded it to the writer, who also happened to be Dan, but that's another story. But, I think the producer and script, dividing this producer and script editor thing would be a useful thing to do. I honestly think that actually having a showrunner doing everything probably is quite exhausting. And I think on American shows, they have much bigger structure of people looking over each other's shoulder. I don't know. I mean, it's horses for courses. It worked perfectly fine when Russell was the showrunner from 2005 until World Enough in Time. I thought that worked very well. I think Chris Chibnall sort of drowned in it a bit. So I think it depends on who you've got. And Russell and Stephen just happen to be the best writers the UK has produced. So you just happen to have the best people that you can possibly get as showrunners. And now it's back to Russell again. I have great faith in people like that to produce things themselves. It might be helpful to have a producer with more of a role saying you can't do that, you can't do that. I don't know. See, as years go by, I feel I'm more a fan of the people behind the scenes and of the show itself. So I was a fan of Russell's run. I was a fan of Stephen's run. And now I'm back being a fan again. I say, quibbles aside, I'm a huge fan of Russell's work. And I'm so glad I'm still glad that he's doing it. I mean, I know there's been a lot of a backlash for this, that, and the other, and stupid things. But I'm a big picture person, and I like the fact that he's writing and he's produced his best work with 73 yards. And the one I can't remember the title of, but the Black Mirror one.
Dot and Bubble. Yes.
What's it called? Dot and Bubble.
Yeah.
I mean, they're the best things he's ever produced for the show. So why do you... I believe that. I think they were really, really sound, good slices of SF and good slices of Gothic noir.
Right.
Great stuff. I have no problems with that at all. You can criticize around the edges, but at the end of the day, it's telly. And I try not to agonize about Doctor Who anymore.
You're the only one.
I sit down and I enjoy it. And I said the only problem I have with Doctor Who at the moment is I'm not getting enough of Doctor Who, the character, the person, because Doctor Who is basically an advertised representation of a character. He hasn't got a character of his own. He's basically a representation of the boffin in every kind of science fiction show that's become the hero instead of the guy who explains things. So that's who he is. And we do iterations of that boffin through all the stories. There's William Hartley's one kind of boffin and John Pertwee is another kind of boffin. So that's what the character is. You can make him a different color, you can make him a different gender, but that's the character. And that's the character I came on board for. So give me something. I don't want him clutching his lapels and putting a monocle in, but I do want something of the boffin there because that's the character. It's like Star Trek captains. You want a Star Trek captain to behave basically like a Star Trek captain. And, it doesn't matter if they're a woman or they're black or they're this or they're that, but that's the role they take. And that's the Doctor's job. And I think you get flashes of that. A lot of people said, oh, he's really the Doctor when he was having a laugh at Unit's technology. And that's the bit they remember. But I'd like to see more than just that. I want to see more of the Doctor.
Yeah, more character development.
But everything else around her, I've watched. I mean, what was it, Space Babies? That was fine. And episode by episode, there's things I like, and there's production. Sorry, go ahead.
Devil's Court.
Yeah. Elements I think could have been done better, but again, you're watching telly, and I enjoyed it for 50 minutes, and I'm looking forward to the next series to see how it shapes up, because I'm pretty okay with it. I'm pretty positive about it.
Are you confident? Obviously, you're confident in Russell, but are you confident that it's in good hands with Disney Plus with this partnership to take it into the streaming era?
Well, again, that's another fan thing to agonize about what's going on behind the scenes and how much freedom Russell has, and that way lies madness, because I don't know. I'm just assuming that Russell has enough control to do what he wants, and whether I like what he wants or not, as long as he's doing what he wants, I'm fine with that. As a writer, I'm fine. I don't want a writer second guessing the audience and the fans. I want them to do what they want. And with Russell and Stephen, all the time, I felt that they were doing what they really wanted to do. They may have had to compromise here and there. I mean, Stephen wasn't allowed Paul McGann for the 50th, which is a sort of great regret. But by and large, he seemed to have got what he wanted with his show. And that's what I want to see. I want to see a writer just writing what they want to do. And whether I agree with it or whether I don't really care, as long as I can see a writer doing what they want to do. It's like George R. Martin with Game of Thrones. If you're doing what you want to do, I don't care if people are disappointed by it. If that's the way you wanted Game of Thrones to end up, with an unassuming guy being on the Iron Throne, then that's fine, because there are parallels to British history, which is what you're aping anyway, and Shakespearean Wars of the Roses stuff. That's exactly what happens in Shakespeare's War of the Roses saga. An unassuming young guy is on the throne instead of someone who's obviously suited our idea of a king. And if that's what you wanted to do, that's fine. That's your story. Do your story. And I don't see why people should complain and litigate and agonize about it. if that's George's story, it's as immovable as Tolkien's story. You can't relitigate Lord of the Rings because he's dead. But don't tell George R.R. Martin that his ending was rubbish. You're in his story.
Yes.
So,
Well, I guess in that case, there's the thing of like, was that his ending? Because there's the nebulous question of when a story is handed over to someone else. And I think the same thing has happened with Star Wars, right? It's not clear who George Lucas's successor is, right? So people go back to the same people who are criticizing him for the prequels are going back to like, well, he should have written the sequels as well, right? And
there's Doctor Who podcast.
Yes, sorry.
Yeah, there's an argument there is no more story to Star Wars.
Yeah,
and you can write stories in that universe. My God, Second World War was only 6 years long, and how many films and movies do we get out of it? And that's basically what we've got. We're in the middle of a war. But do you want to see a Star Wars story which has nothing to do with the war bit and just is set on a planet? I don't think people are going to buy that, but I don't think people will appreciate it when you do a series about Jedi, for example. It's a very difficult line to cross. It's like doing a Doctor Who spin-off.
Yeah. Well, speaking of which...
Yeah, what do you like about it?
Speaking of which, what do you think of the war between the land and the sea? What do you think of making Sea Devils?
Don't care.
Yep.
Are you going to watch it?
I don't know. I say my life is sucked up with so much television. The problem you have with a Doctor-less spin-off, I don't know if it is a Doctor-less spin-off, is that question that was posed in class, which was never answered, is why doesn't the Doctor come and help them out? And he basically had Peter Capaldi saying, right, I'm going to fuck off now, and you can just fight all these monsters and die on your own. That's the thing you've got to get over. That's the hump you've got to get over. So unless they've got David Tennant being Doctor Who in this series, then what are you going to do? I'm always interested, and I'm very open-minded with anything that Russell does, and I'm be very excited by it. But I regard Doctor Who as television now, and I cannot watch it or watch it. I didn't watch a lot of the Sarah Jane Adventures, and I didn't watch a lot of Torchwood because I have a finite amount of time on this planet, and I go where what interests me. Russell interests me. I watched It's a Sin, and I watched what's the future one?
Years and Years.
Years and Years. I thought they were fantastic, and that's exactly what I wanted to see him doing. If this is going to be one where Russell just writes the opening episode and he just palms it off to a bunch of haircuts, I don't care. I don't care about anything that's made like a sausage machine. I watched the first episode of Sarah Jane. I thought, that's not for me. It's quite fun, but it's not me. I'm not a child. So
he went to some interesting places in Torchwood. I'll say that. He stuck with that one for a while.
Yeah. I mean, it's like Star Trek. I mean, the first couple of 2 series of Picard were worthless, absolutely worthless. And then the third series came along, and someone like Terry Mathias, that's that his name, took Picard and made it fantastic. And now I'm a fan of Terry Mathias, and I want him to do more. And people go, no, you don't want more Terry Mathias. You want more Star Trek of some description. It doesn't matter who writes it. It doesn't matter what it is. I've got my thing. And then we're going to have, Sector 31 or whatever they're called.
Right, yeah, Section 31.
Section 31.
Yep.
Does it matter? There's a team of writers, and we're going to produce this nonsense, and I don't care. But I am now a fan of Terry Mathias, just like I'm a fan of Stephen Moffat and I'm a fan of Russell T Davies. I want to follow them. And I get a feeling from when I was growing up with Classic Who, I was following a small number of writers. Terence Dicks, Robert Holmes, Malcolm Hulke, Brian Hales, and then later Eric Sayward. I did like Eric Sayward's work. And Chris Bidmead, I liked some of his work. So I followed it. And I was following the writers, and I think it took me all the way to the end of the classic series, and then I became a writer. And I think I'm a fan of writers doing the writing thing. So all the business about continuity and stuff is really kind of like it's like asking, what's your favorite color at night? I have no answer to that.
Yeah.
I have no answer to what you're saying about continuity. I'm just saying, what writer would you like to see handling this continuity? What writer would you like writing a story about this continuity? And I'll say, well, yeah, Russell or Stephen or Terry Mathias, who did a fantastic job with Next Gen continuity and did a fantastic job.
Nice. I feel a flashing red line right coming at us. This has been fantastic. Nev, thanks for taking the time to chat with us here.
It's a lot of fun. It's been fun.
Very, very sweet. Thank you. Yes.
Does that help?
If you're just tuning in, Jacqueline King has given me a fan, and I'm most definitely a fan of hers for this. Thank you. Oh my goodness.
You are welcome.
We do need to normalise the fan.
Yes, we do, totally.
Yes.
This was a table present at a wedding I was at last year of a dear friend, a conductor and an actress. He was from Spain, so hence a fan was a very appropriate present for the British wedding.
Yes.
And they wrote on the fan their names and the date of the wedding, and I've used it every day since, but did I remember the anniversary? Even though I was sitting looking at the date on the fan every day, and I still managed to miss their anniversary.
Oh, that's good. Yes, you don't even have the excuse of I was looking at it the American way.
I know.
No.
Anyway.
Do people worry when they invite you to weddings that they're going to be transported up to the TARDIS during the ceremony? Or?
I don't tend to talk about Doctor Who at weddings.
But do people come up to you in weddings and want to talk about that?
Not really. I mean, certainly people who I know. I'm not sure anybody. This sounds terrible. I don't want to insult anyone, but I don't think they watch it. That was going to be true of my entire life. I was never going to marry an actor. I wanted to talk about other things, but I did meet an actor, and I don't regret it at all.
Yes.
He's gorgeous, and we've been together a long time, so it's worked.
Right.
But no conversations about work, because of course it becomes work, doesn't it? You know, when it's your career.
Right.
Don't tend to happen in my social life. So just there may be a happenstance that I bump into somebody who doesn't know me, who might recognise me, but that only happens occasionally.
Right. Okay, well, let's talk about the thing that you don't talk about at weddings. Because we are here at Long Island Who. So we should talk about Doctor Who.
Oh, and I want to. It's fun.
We can do that as a whole other interview. But yes, obviously you have come back. It is so. I should tell you our podcast first. It's called Pull to Open. Pull to Open.
Pull to Open. Great title. Yes, I love that.
And we go randomly through the Doctor's adventures. We choose a different random number, corresponds to a different episode.
And you pull to open. That's great.
And we went recently, around about the time that you returned for the specials.
Yes.
To Partners in Crime. Was your
my first one.
You were in
Runaway Bride. Sorry, Runaway Bride was funny. Yes, sorry.
But it did have this marvelous scene of where you were in the kitchen and Donna sitting there.
Oh, yes.
Sort of in 15 different positions.
Yes. Wasn't that cleverly filmed?
Such a good.
Very clever.
Yes.
We're in the hands of genius writers, genius photographers, and genius directors. I'm surrounded by talent, and of course I get Catherine to work with. So how lucky am I?
And it's just such. I mean, we love the way the randomizer takes us to these things when we need to go there, because we could see the contrast between Sylvia there and now.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. She was on her case, wasn't she?
Yes, she was all over her case. Which, by the way, that must have been exhausting to film so many scenes of just berating her in the background.
I was just in seventh heaven. It's much more fun to play that. It's much more fun.
Right.
If you're playing any sort of character that's got a bit of oomph and a bit of character, a bit of strength, that's great. You go for it full tilt, and you don't become an actor wanting to take time off. You want to be working. You want to be more takes, please. I'm not the sort of actor who asks for them, but if the director says, let's go again, I'm going, yes, please. Yes, please. I want to do it again and again and again, and try and improve, try and get better. I remember that day, actually, that we did that very same scene. Catherine had noticed very cleverly that she was wearing what looked like job interview clothes. And she said, you're accusing me of sitting at home doing nothing, so we're going to have to change the script here that, you look like you're trying to get a job, but you're not. And so we had to ring up Russell, and he wrote some new lines. So I did have to learn some new lines for that day. But that was fun. I was going
to say that could be improvisable, right?
Not with Russell. I wouldn't want to. It's like all good writers. I've worked with some amazing writers, and Russell, of course, is right at the top there, who you just don't want to. You just think, I'm going to honour their experience and their expertise, and I will learn every full stop and comma and inverted commas. Other writers ask you, please improvise, this would be fun. If you just have a little random little scene here, that'd be great. And I enjoy that too, but I would never, ever presume on a good writer to do that. Yeah.
Okay.
Somebody like Burnett can get away with it.
Right.
Because he's such an expert comic. Well, he was, a superb expert comic and timing, and his ideas were fresh. And so Russell would always say, "Oh yeah, go for it."
Right. Yes, he had the whole idea of the Dalek and the eye store.
Exactly.
Yes. So, do you feel like the evolution of Sylvia was it after we last saw her on screen? Because she would come back and she's nice. She's nice and she's worried about misgendering Rose and all of that stuff.
Yeah.
Did you have any conversations with Russell or
No.
think about yourself about what had happened?
No, I genuinely didn't. I had no clue she was coming back. I mean, no clue whatsoever. And so it came absolutely out of the blue. But Russell and I had stayed in contact. I didn't see much of him or anything, but we would text and just stay in contact. So I'm hoping, and I'm only surmising here, I'm hoping that he thought, well, there's a bit of Jax here that we haven't explored. Maybe we could encourage her to be a lady that has grown, that has learned over the years. And I think Russell wanted to introduce Rose, so that so many people out there got somebody to identify with, and wanted to make the whole family a closer unit. And
you were speaking, I think, for a large portion of people who are like, well, I don't like. There's not necessarily any animosity, but I don't know. Like, what if I use the wrong pronouns?
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
And it was so refreshing. I actually punched the air when I saw that. It was so refreshing to see that, because I think, there are a lot of people out there
who are trying their best.
Yeah.
Well, somebody put it beautifully to me. They said, you don't learn French overnight. And so this is new vocabulary for a lot of people.
Right.
And so they're learning it, and we're taking our time, we're making mistakes, but we're getting there. As long as you've got the right intentions, and if it's evident that you want to be inclusive and you want to be as helpful as you can be, and if you have love, then it'll be all right. Yeah.
Exactly. And of course, at what point did you find out that you were going to be living with a doctor for the rest of
Nobody would ever have guessed that, would they?
Right, yes.
And I love that in the final scene she says, "Oh, I've only just got started." I think they're going to carry on their banter, but there's going to be a great deal of respect and love there. But they'll carry on poking each other in the ribs quite a lot, I imagine.
As any loving family would. But did Russell tell you about that in advance? Did you find out when you wrote the script?
I didn't see that script. I saw the first of the 3 specials. I saw the first and had that to prepare.
Yes,
and thank you. Yes. See, everyone I talk to knows lots more about what I've done than I do. So yes, Star Beast I'd read, and then when we got to the read-through, we read all 3 episodes, and I had to read in for Bonnie Langford because she couldn't make the third one. So I just read about, and so I was sight reading that, going, I've no idea what's happening here. This is interesting. And then when we got to the 3rd episode, it was hello. So I was as surprised as everyone. Yes, and delighted, thrilled.
So just at the read-through,
pretty much when I saw the whole script, yes. I had been given an intimation that yes, she'd be there. She'd still be there in the 3rd episode, but I didn't really know what the scenario was.
So something that fans bring up a lot is, of course, you have to manufacture ways for David Tennant's Doctor to not be involved in every story going forward, right?
Yes.
Every crisis,
yes.
or the upcoming spin-off where it's like, well, okay, maybe Shooty is off around the galaxy, but what about 14? Yes. What about David? He's just sitting right there at your table,
enjoying family life.
So, do you have any? We call it on the show headcanon. Any sort of ideas for how we can explain away David's non-presence going forward, and like any crisis, any emergency that the unit might want to call him in?
I can't put hand on heart and say that I've given this a great deal of thought. I know that sounds awful, but I just was so content with the image of David's doctor being with us nobles that I've left it there in my imagination. I haven't really sort of gone beyond as to what might happen from that day forward. I just loved the look that he and Donna give at that table of just, this is the happiest they've been, and I want to leave them in that bubble of happiness.
Right. I was thinking maybe it was Wolf and the moles, it becomes a serious problem. He has to go deal with that.
Yes, wouldn't that be lovely? But again, my heart was so full of knowledge that we'd lost Bernard.
Yes.
That, we didn't know the day that we filmed that. We still were hopeful. We were still hopeful that we could maybe get him into that scene and have him with us at the table. But sadly, that wasn't to be. But we'd seen him at the read-through. And then, of course, David and Catherine got to do that lovely scene with him. But I didn't get to do my last scene. But I had dinner with him the last time, so that was nice. Yeah.
That's lovely, and it is lovely that he is left alive in Doctor Who.
Absolutely, isn't that beautiful? Well, he'll be alive in everybody's hearts anyway. He'll be in the Railway Children. He'll be reciting the Wombles. He'll be with us forever. Yeah.
It is so bizarre because Bernard Grimm is such a big part of my childhood, and Jack and Ori and Faulty Towers, and he just seemed to be in everything.
Oh, and no one could beat that voice.
And he seemed to be alive forever.
Yes, I know.
So strange.
Well, he will be. He will be with us forever. Yeah, I was at a memorial for somebody else in the church where we'd held the memorial for Bernard, and so I went and had a look at the wall, and the plaque on it just said, "I'd rather be fishing." Isn't that nice?
Excellent.
Yeah.
All right, I think we do have to wrap it up now.
Okay. Well, it's been a delight.
Yes, thank you so much for
Thank you.
Ready to go, Tom. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me here.
Yes.
Not only here, but in the Long Island, in the States. And I have to say that never having had one before, I was told by my stepdaughter I had to have a Long Island iced tea.
Yes.
Not knowing anything about it. I had one the first night I arrived at 5 o'clock, and I said to her, "I'll see you about 7 and we'll have something to eat." Next thing I knew, it was 6 o'clock the next morning.
Yeah. Yeah, the iced tea is around here.
Yeah, absolutely. But at least I know what to have before bedtime.
Exactly. Knock you straight out.
That's it, boom, I'm out. Yeah.
So how has this con been for you? How is it to be among the fans again after COVID?
Well, hey, I mean, I was 16 when Doctor Who started, right? I was a fanboy, front and centre with Hartnell and Troughton.
Right.
So it's being part of an extended family. No matter how many years you may have been in it, or when you first started I first started watching it when I was 16, and I'm now 77, and I still love it. So I have commonality with everybody here, as with Tennant or Capaldi. We were all fans.
Right.
We've all been there.
Did you have any periods where you quit the show, or you were like, "Oh, I'm not quite so into it"?
No. What? Doctor Who?
Yeah.
No. I mean, I did. I didn't watch it until after Troughton, because I went off to university and then went off to work. And in those days, we didn't have videos or did things on demand or coming back. And so I missed Pertwee and Tom Baker completely.
Oh my goodness!
So
you missed the first episode.
when I was asked by Matthew Robinson, who I'd just been working with, if I'd fancy, joining Doctor Who, he said, about Doctor Who? I said, "Oh, come on. Yeah, of course, I'm a fan." Yeah, you know about the Daleks? Yes, the Daleks, fantastic, And you know all about Davros. I went, "Who?"
Dave Ross?
Dave Ross? I had no idea, mate, because I hadn't seen it, So they sat me down in front of Genesis, and that was it. Me thinking it was going to be a 2-week job, and that would be off and away. And but it's now here, years later, and still it's hanging like an albatross around my neck. But a very friendly albatross.
Yes, exactly. With a great chair.
With a great chair.
An albatross with a fantastic chair.
So you did 3 adventures for the classics.
On television, I worked with Peter Davidson first of all, then
Right.
Colin Baker, and then Sylvester.
Yeah, Three Doctors, right?
3 Doctors. Then it all closed down.
Yeah.
Then
Then the Big Finishes.
the Big Finish started kicking up, and I joined them. They rang me up because it was Gary Russell had done an interview for Sci-Fi magazine, and I had a piece in there that I'd done an interview for at the same time. And he rang me up. He said, "We seem to be talking on the same sheet here. Would you like to come and do a Davros story?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "But no Daleks." I said, "Fine, okay." So suddenly it was going back to put the comfy slippers on, and the great thing was I didn't have to put all the schlep on. I could just sit there at the mic and be the character.
Was that the one with Colin Baker? Was that the one called Davros?
It was just called Davros, with Colin. Yeah,
That was a really fun one. I remember that
it
one.
was good. It was very good. Yeah,
You're both sort of competing. You're both sort of working for this company. It was very
that's right.
interesting.
Yeah, it was really odd. Yeah,
Like an odd
and they
couple
became like co-colleagues in
Yeah.
delivering this, whatever it was, and but of course there's always a twist in the end when it comes to Davros. He doesn't.
Well, I also love that it was kind of a double act. 'Cause
Yes.
Davros, very much the straight man,
Yeah,
his
to the jokey. Yeah, it's all swung around now. I mean, I'm the comic, and Colin's my straight man.
Yes, we heard you do it. We heard it.
We do a bit. Yeah,
Quite a double
yeah.
act. Yeah.
No, but it was that was good. I enjoyed that, and we started doing a few more of those, and
And you got to act with Paul McGann, right?
with Paul McGann, I did indeed, and I did. I'm trying to think which one it was. Was it Terra Nova, or there was one that just started with me talking?
Terra Firma?
Terra Firma. That's it.
I think that was.
Yeah, and where he's in his cell and being
Right.
told to
Yeah.
turn himself off,
Yeah.
and it was the first one I'd done with Paul, and Paul's very louche, and he just wanders in and does a bit, but I could sense him stiffening up as I started. He thought, "Hello, competition here," but also, I mean, I did it in one take, and I didn't hear it until it went out, and they sent it to me, to have a listen. And so I say to people, "Look, for God's sake, do not listen to the beginning of Davros or whatever it was. Anyway, Terra Firma,
Yeah.
on your own in the dark. It terrifies the shit out of me. This is not the end. This is only the beginning." Ding-a-da-ding, but yeah, and I did another one with Paul, not recently, called Palindrome,
Okay.
which was fantastic because it was part of the Time Wars series. I read it and I couldn't work it out because it's backwards. It starts on day 5
Yes.
and moves back to day 1.
Okay.
So Davros, who is an ordinary person, married to a Thal,
Right.
he's still a brilliant scientist, but not the Davros we know.
Right.
He's living life backwards and keeps waking up, and it's all slightly different. And he meets the doctor, and the doctor's trying to talk to him. He says, "Who are you?" But we met yesterday. No, we didn't. Who the hell? No, go away. And he's developing this wonderful time transportation thing, which
So you get a lantern fly.
have you
Sort of, it's a little higher.
there?
It's okay. I think it might have.
Oh, lanternfly.
Yeah.
Oh,
It's gone.
I love bugs. I live in a communal house with spiders, so it's good with me. So it was basically the Davros has been killed in this, dimension, but there are ultimate dimensions,
Yes.
and so they go around trying to find the Davros that could be reinterred as the Davros they know.
Yeah.
Right.
So the Davros, the time controller, Dalek time controller, comes back in time to capture this Davros, the normal Davros, and slowly change him back into Davros.
Okay.
And the Doctor's trying to stop him, and they're all trying to make it happen. Cracking piece. I mean, just a bit of a mind bender. I said to people,
I love those ones, though.
it's a bit, woo.
So there have been 3 or 4 Davroses, and I feel like each one has its own kind of ethos and
Yeah.
character. And I'm curious, because I think your version it's really smartly different from Michael Wisher and
Yes.
the two that came before you. Because,
Yeah.
And I feel like he's been in this prison for 90
Prison
years
for
or something.
for endless years.
One of your first lines is I was awake the whole time. And
Yes, and everything, and that was the first, second, and then we went on into Infinity. I mean, Michael. I only met Michael once at a convention, and he was doing the Trial of Davros, which he'd written with the convention organizer. So that was the only time I actually met him, because he died shortly afterwards. Dave Goodison, who came on, was given his mask, so it didn't look right. Yeah. It was awful, and Tom Baker just basically sent it all up and climbed ladders to get away from them.
Yes, I was going to say, when they showed you Genesis, did they also show you Destiny of the Daleks?
I did see Destiny afterward, but I thought, no, I'm sticking with it, because all I was doing, they wanted me to do was recreate the voice. I didn't have to do a copy of what Michael was doing, though obviously I took on board his power, and as I started to do it, I realized there were so many things about the mask, for instance, which informs the way you play it, and because you put that on, and suddenly in those days it was just foam latex and it didn't move,
right?
So you had to speak in a very pedantic manner in order to get any movement on the outside of the mask. So immediately the paranoia was setting in.
Right.
The voice started to come down, and the claustrophobia of being inside it. And you turned into Davros, and you wanted to exterminate the Doctor. And it all informed into it. And interestingly, when because they did a totally new mask for me, Stan Mitchell designed a new mask, but. I knew everybody. We were rehearsing, and in those days we did rehearse. We rehearsed at what they call the North Acton Hilton, which was a big set of rehearsal rooms where everything was done. And we had 2 weeks to rehearse. It was lovely. And then at the end, they would do the producer's run. But when we got in the studio, of course, they then put all the makeup on and everything. And people that I'd known, like going, hi, Christian, and they walk on by and just think, hey, it's me, So
that helps.
You suddenly becomes, think, right.
That helps inform
swines,
the acting as
the
well.
acting
right?
as well.
You're
going to be like that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, I'll go conquer the galaxy.
Yeah. Except I couldn't do that, and especially when they finished a scene with me and say, right, on to scene 20, and it's on the other side of the studio, and I'm there in my locked into my thing, and I want to pee, and everyone's gone.
You're stuck in the chair. They didn't give you a bottle or
anything. No. So there were restrictions to.
You couldn't wheel yourself to the bathroom in that.
No, well, I could, but people said, "Oh, it's great being able to wheel around." I said, "No, come on, it's the BBC. You're talking a supermarket trolley base, right, with 4 wheels. You're talking 4x2-inch timber, cladding the whole thing, in the back of which there are 2 lead 12-volt car batteries to run all the electrics, and there's a little hole cut in the floor, and they'd say, drag it with your toes, and don't wobble. Well, you try and drag something along with your toes, you can't. You can go backwards fine. You're trying to go forwards in a particular direction, and it always wanted to, because it's a supermarket trolley. It wants to go there, and you're trying to get there. So you have to side pedal to get it to where it's meant to be going to be on camera. And
it's a lot of physical acting.
It was, really, physically, probably one of the most demanding things I've had to do. But
it does sound like a health and safety nightmare.
It was.
They wouldn't do that these days.
No.
Yeah.
But it did, as you say, it informed the character.
Yes. So you're paranoid and you're sitting on explosives.
Sitting on explosives that won't go where I want it to go.
Yeah.
And I'm meant to be cheery? I don't think so.
Yes, does give you sort of, the Nazi vibe.
The Nazi vibe is definitely there.
Around
yeah.
So Julian and Bleach obviously, did the role in the new series.
Yes.
And but I don't know if you've kept up with the recent developments, and that they did a Children in Need special with him, right? Out of the chair.
As an ordinary person, yes.
Right,
Yeah.
So,
which is right, he was. You know, I mean, in I, Davros, which was a 4-part Big Finish thing, the first two and a half bits of that, Davros is normal. He's young. You know, it starts as a 16-year-old child and goes up to the creation of the first Dalek. So you never hear the Daleks until right at the very end of I, Davros, when you hear the first one saying, "I am alive," you know, and you get to Nida and all of that, you know, and
so
so
I'm just curious what you think of the idea of doing more with Davros as
Without the chair.
Without the chair, but also as Russell T Davies' comments about it, and sort of the idea that I don't know if you heard that he said it's sort of time to move on from depicting someone in a wheelchair as sort of evil or sort of think that was sort of a thing. And there's a lot of people with, well, shall we say, strong opinions on either side of that.
Yeah. I mean, I say, look, do what you want, because as far as I'm concerned, there are ultimate dimensions in Doctor Who. So you can say, right, that's that particular dimension. Now let's go to the one where he is in a wheelchair. Now let's go to the one where he's a perfectly normal person, and he's not paranoid and he's not Hitler, you know.
Right.
And there are ultimate Davroses, as there are ultimate Doctors.
Yeah.
There are certain ultimate Doctors in this dimension, but there must be other dimensions with other Doctors in.
Yes.
It's like the doppelganger thing, you know. There's got to be somewhere else, someone who's you.
Right.
And
You can always try something new.
yeah. No, I'm you know, hell, you know, do what you like with it. You know, I mean, it's. I'm very happy to have been a part of it in the days when it was still that iconic wheelchair-bound character. You know, and as I've got a stepdaughter who's wheelchair-bound, I'm very amenable to those problems of differentiation in mobility, and the fact that he was totally mobile before he got blown up by a bomb. You know, he was a car-led youth and one of the beautiful people, and then it all changed. So do what you like with it. You know, if you want to bring me back as a older version of the old version, then I'm quite happy to do that. You know, I've met Julian once because when it came out, people said, you know, are you going to do that? I said, no idea about it, you know. And when it came out, they said, oh, you know, did you watch it? I said, no, I was actually at Svalbard at the time, 600 miles from the North Pole. No, I didn't. I didn't actually, in fact, watch that first one with Tennant until probably a couple of years later. I caught it in a hotel room, you know. I thought, yeah, that's good, you know. I had issues with the final iteration that they insisted on having him open his eyes, and I think that's wrong. No, he does not have eyes, or the Doctor being in his chair, because there is no space for the bottom half of the body. You know, you just think, oh, you were just gilding the lily there a bit, you know, and that was But also, anyway,
Peter Capaldi didn't have to use his toes.
He didn't have to use his toes. Well, if he had, he would have, you know.
Yeah. How would he even?
How would he have got in there? Because it's meant to be all electronics.
Right.
Yeah. So that was all a bit silly. But then Doctor Who's fairly silly, and that's great. That's one of the charms of Doctor Who over the ages.
In your 3 stories, there was a very clear progression because you were sort of in the same state as Michael Wish or David Goodman.
Yes.
But then your hand gets shot off.
Yes. And also, we started to try and develop it so that, you know, like in Revelation, we suddenly discover he's got a sense of humour. So the Doctor says, you mean to tell me you didn't tell people you were using their relatives as dead bodies to become Daleks? He said, certainly not. I believe that would have created what they term consumer resistance. You think, he's not just ranter. We wanted to get away from the ranting, the Hitler thing, you know, and back into more of a relationship or non-relationship with the Doctor. Because for me, the important thing was not the bangs and the whistles and the explosions. It was the basically 3-dimensional chess game the Doctor and Davros play with each other.
Yes.
Because they're both on the same intellectual level and they know it. They're both alone and they know it. And they kind of need each other.
Yes.
You know, I mean, one of them I think, Paul McGann one, Davros says to him, you're the closest thing I've got to a friend. You know, if you weren't here, who would I really talk to? Who would I be able to engage with?
I always feel like
you're right there.
Davros, the reason he doesn't kill the Doctor right away in both of his adventures is because he likes talking to him.
Yes, they love the intellectual challenge. It's the chat that gets them going, not the arm wrestling over a Dalek table. It's
He cares about the planet or whatever.
no.
Just having a relationship.
Yeah.
So
Well, thank you so much for spending some time with us.
my absolute pleasure.
Showing us your Sonic. Beautiful.
This is my Sonic. Yeah, this is my Sonic.
I
So
love the Dalek
if
buffs.
anybody wishes to become a Dalek, all you have to do is look into the wild line. And before you know, you feel yourself drifting towards Skaro, when suddenly you become a Dalek in 24 hours from now.
Wow.
Chocolate's the only way out.
Tell all your friends. Share this far and wide. No, Terry, it's been a pleasure. Thank
No,
you so
my
much
pleasure
for coming
indeed.
on.
Thank
Love
you,
it to
Terry.
be with you.
Again, I'm Pete. This is Chris. We both do a podcast. It's called Pull to Open.
Yeah.
And we don't normally do a lot of interviews, but we're starting to. And we essentially, our shtick is that we go through the entire television run of Doctor Who, all 60 years, just in random order. So we'll do something from the Davison era, we'll do something from Whittaker, we'll do something from Hartnell, and jump all around. So fairly early in our run, we actually did Modern Undead. And I want to just say that your role in Doctor Who was pretty pivotal to me getting into the show. Because it's a strange coincidence that Modern Undead was the first Doctor Who show I ever saw.
Wow.
And I remember it well because it seared me, because I remember distinctly seeing the credits and you see the Starfield and Peter Davison's face and all that stuff. I thought, this looks interesting. I was into Star Trek, so I thought this is some science fiction. I might like it. And then it cuts to the first scene with you and, wrecking the Brigadier's car and stuff. But it's all, British schoolboy. There's nothing sci-fi about it whatsoever. And I'm like, what am I ready? Was I lied to by the credits that was implying this sci-fi thing? And then it cuts to, of course, after the accident, that you have this great sort of exchange with Valentine Dial and the whole, 80s kind of a sci-fi computery thing. But I just thought that was really cool. And I was just riveted from that moment forward. And I hadn't even seen the TARDIS or the Doctor or whatever. And I sort of figured all that stuff out, obviously, in the subsequent episodes. But that was kind of like it for me. That's completely drew me in. So thank you, because it's led to this whole journey where I'm doing a podcast now. Got my friend Chris to do it with me. And
we're both journalists as well. And we have covered Doctor Who. And, we've been to Comic-Con, interviewed the showrunners, all of that. So it's, you helped him with his professional life from the beginning. What do you remember about Mordred Undead at this point? Anything, or is it all?
No. I remember it very well. I think if you're on a sort of an iconic program like Doctor Who, you definitely remember coming onto it. But what people don't realise is I'd had conversations before I appeared on the program with John Nathan Turner, the producer, and Eric Saywood, the script editor. I'd read for them, and they thought I was very right for the character. That's all very well and good. But what I didn't realise is you don't get any rehearsal. None at all. Not one day. Not 1 hour, right? Because when I was on Doctor Who, the location scenes, so the scenes at the beginning of Mordred Undead where I crashed the Brigadier's car and whatever, right? That's all shot on location. No rehearsal for it at all. Not even a reading. And so I was actually on holiday in France. I'd been working on another series and I had a holiday in France for 10 days before I started on Doctor Who. I'd got the scripts, I'd read the scripts, but whatever I did on day one, and the first scene shot was the scene with me and a schoolboy called Hippo, right? And I persuaded him to get into the car and off we drive in the car. That was the first scene that was shot. Whatever I did in that scene was Turlo. For the rest of all the time I was in Doctor Who. I didn't know how long I was going to be in Doctor Who. I mean, I knew I was going to be in it for at least a year or so, but I could have been in Doctor Who for 4 or 5 years. And whatever I did on that first day was Turlo. So
did you regret any choices you made?
No, I didn't. Well, John Nathan Turner, the producer, was there, right? And so we did a run of the scene, filming. We did that, and John signalled me over to him, right? So, my heart was in my mouth, really, because, the executive producer wants to talk to you after you've done your first scene, right? Mm-hmm. And he said, Mark, he said, it's very, very good, very good. He said, could you be a bit posher? And I said, really sorry, no, John, that's as posh as I get. And John and I both come from a city near Birmingham, right? We come from quite near each other. I haven't got a posh accent. I didn't go to public school. I don't come from that sort of background. I was doing it as posh as I could. And he said, and this proves what a good producer he was, because I'm a producer these days, and it was the sort of thing he should have said. He said, Mark, you've got to live with this character. Whatever you're happy with, I'm happy with. So just relax into it. It's great. What you're doing is great. You just continue on as you are. And we did another take, and I think I was a bit more confident in it, but they probably took the first take, because often the first take is the best take for whatever reasons.
It's probably for the best that you weren't more posh, right? Because I think that the way that British culture has changed since then, it's kind of almost a reverse snobbery, right? So I think if someone had been, like Billy Bunter posh,
Well, but the previous job I was in before Doctor Who was a soap opera called Angels, that was set in Birmingham, and I was a broomy ambulance driver called Terry. And Terry ate a lot of cheese on toast and ran around grabbing his hat and putting his hat on, and had a girlfriend called Alison, and he thought it was a sophisticated night out going for quiche. So, my mother, I trained at RADA, the Royal Academy, and my mother said to me, she said to me, Mark, I don't understand why you don't speak properly on television. So I said, well, I'm doing a character, Mummy. He comes from Birmingham, right? But Birmingham's very near where I come from, so I can drop into that accent anytime I want to.
Right. But you weren't so...
But I'm not posh, is the thing. I'm not a public school boy. But people said to me, so you didn't look like a schoolboy at all. You were too old. Well, I was too old. I was 24, 23, right? Far too old.
You always looked a little too big for the suit.
But it was supposed to be like that. I mean, if unless anybody didn't notice, which I can't imagine they didn't, my eyebrows were combed up with glue. So my eyebrows were vertical. Now, I don't know, I was not supposed to look like a schoolboy. You were supposed to think this guy was a bit weird. There's something different about this guy. He's not in the right place in the right time. He's pretending to be someone. So when people say, oh, you didn't look like a schoolboy at all, I said, that's the whole point of it.
So it worked. Well, that's it's cool that you say that, because the whole idea, obviously, with Turlough is they were doing something really different with that companion, and certainly for the early episodes, working against the Doctor, kind of unwillingly, certainly. But I'd be curious on what your relationship is, I guess, kind of with the fans on this one, because I would imagine there was some, and there is today, was that good? Was that bad? That choice of doing sort of these more interesting companions, it certainly led to some interesting choices later in the new series. So you have people like Adam Mitchell and sort of these almost anti-hero characters. But how was that perceived at the time, and how did how does your relationship with that character and the fans' relationship with that character sort of change?
Turlough was never really introduced as an assistant as such. He was introduced as a long-running character, and there were lots of reasons for this. The main was that before I was in it, there was Tegan and Nyssa and Adric, and 3 people in the TARDIS is too many with the Doctor. Nobody gets a part. It's too cramped, and it just doesn't work. What does work is a doctor and a female assistant, or a female doctor and a male assistant. I don't know how, but 2 people in the TARDIS work very well. Occasionally 3, right? So, Zoe and Jamie and things like that, right? That can work too, right? But 3, no. Right. And so Turlough was introduced as a long-running character who could be self-sufficient. I mean, Turlough could drive the TARDIS. He had his own spaceship. He had his own transmat capsule,
indeed,
which is my favourite line in the whole show I ever did. Right in the first episode, when the transmat capsule appears, Hippo, my sidekick schoolboy, played by an actor called Stephen Garlick, who used to make me laugh all the time. It appeared, the transmat capsule, and Hippo had to say, "What's that?" And my favourite line ever is, it's a transmat capsule. Don't you know anything? I used to love doing that line. But Turner was intelligent. He could make his own decisions, and he didn't need the Doctor to go around the universe, and that wasn't the point of it. And I think it worked bringing him in as this villainous character, controlled by the Black Guardian, because that allowed him not to be villainous in the end and travel with the Doctor. But he was never supposed to be the assistant. Turlo never said, "What's that?" or "What's this?" or "Where are we?" He didn't have those questions, right? And if he did, I altered the line. I altered the line in intonation. So rather than saying "What's that?" if I looked at the display in the TARDIS, I'd go, "What's that?" as if I knew what it was slightly, or "Where are we?" Mm-hmm. I know what's going on, right? I'm not asking for any information from the Doctor. I'm asking myself a rhetorical question. Turlo never asks the Doctor questions, right?
That's making a lot of sense.
Where are we going?
Things that
where are we going? Yeah. Completely different intonation, right? It's that Turlo knows where they're going. But he doesn't know enough about it. Where are we going? It's accusatory. Yes. It's where the hell are you taking us, Doctor? Because I don't like the look of this, or I like the look of it. Where are we going? But he knows.
That's amazing. Just your intonation is taking me back to 10-year-old me watching that for the first time. But we did. So Maldron Undead was Pete's first. For the show, I mean, I was Tom Baker guy myself, but for the show, the very first random episode was Planet of Fire. So we started with Turlo's End. And it was kind of interesting to view it that way. But did you ever feel like, I mean, that was obviously there was a whole backstory that wasn't fully developed, and they kind of seemed like they squeezed it all into Planet of Fire, right? Did you feel like that, did you feel shortchanged?
No, I didn't feel shortchanged. I think they did very well. I mean, I resigned from the show, so they only had a limited amount of time to I didn't resign from the show because I wasn't enjoying it. I had a fantastic time with Doctor Who, lovely team to work with, and I thought the scripts I worked on were very good and they were strong. But Theta was leaving, and I wanted to go out with a decent story, and I wanted to go out strongly. And I think Planet of Fire is a strong story, and we'd spoken about the backstory. And I was very happy how I went out. It was good.
Yeah. You get to be the bridge between.
Yeah, and I wasn't killed. I can come back. Never want to get killed on Doctor Who because you go. It's more. You can come back, but it's more difficult to come back.
Yes, and telling Perry to look after him as well. There's something quite touching about that, right? Yeah, it's like, look after this old man here who doesn't quite know what he's about. And have you remained a fan since then? Do you still watch the show?
Well, sadly, I live in New Zealand. Well, not sadly, but I have lived in New Zealand for almost 20 years now. So I haven't. I'm not pleased to say. I have a 15, almost 16-year-old son. So I spend quite a lot of money on TV satellite channels and subscriptions. And I've got Neon, and I've got Netflix, and I've got Sky. And I refuse to buy Disney Plus as well, right? I said, made me bankrupt, right? When I go to the UK again, I'm going to see the new Doctor, again. And I go to the UK very frequently, right? I'll watch the new Doctor Who's. But I'm sorry to say, I've been working very hard, and I haven't had time.
Yes, well, that's...
And I'm a mean old man, and I refuse to buy another television subscription.
Completely legit, especially the prices they've been putting it up to. There is...
But he's great. He's a great actress. I'm sure they're really good.
It's more the fact that there's something happen, and trying not to spoil it here, but there's something that happens that affects the whole of the backstory, including the time you were in the show.
Well, I better watch it.
There's a lot of great funny.
Yes, but even Colin hasn't watched that, and we just learned that at his panel today. So it's we've got a lot of people to ask over the next few years, like how this changes things.
So we've been seeing like a little bit of what's happened to some of the characters in the years since they left the Doctor through some of these one-off, usually sort of mini-shows that they've done for the DVD or Blu-ray box sets and things like that. And so you have the person you pass the torch to, Perry. Right? She's gone on to be this warrior queen or something in the cosmos. What do you think Captain Turlo topped that if there's a future for him?
Well, no, I mean, if there was a future for Turlo, I'd like Turlo to have gone bad, You see what I mean? It's much more interesting, right? Right? The Doctor was a good influence on him, but then he went back to his palette. And Turner was a politician. I mean, he was a political exile, right? So I reckon he goes back to his palette and he gets into all sorts of trouble, and he goes to the wrong side, right? That would be much. That would be much more. Yeah, that would be much more interesting. Oh, Turner would make a fantastic dictator.
Yeah.
So would I.
Yes.
I do share a certain amount.
Yes.
No, I'm a TV producer these days. It helps to have a slight dictator gene in your system if you're a producer, because at the end of the day, the buck stops with me as a producer. I have to make decisions. I have to make decisions every day that what's in a program and who I hire and all those sorts of things. So you can't bugger about being a television producer. There isn't the money. You have to get on with it.
The trains have to run on time.
Yeah, they do. Yeah. I'm back in the edit room next Thursday in New Zealand, and I've got 2 hours to get out in the next 7 to 8 weeks. It ain't relaxing. But one of the things you have to be able to do is make quick decisions and not, just get on with it. So I'd like Turner to go that way.
Yeah.
Dictator Turner, I like that.
Yeah.
That does sound like a wonderful big finish there. Because I know you have done some big finishes.
Yeah, I have. Yeah.
I haven't followed any of the story.
No, they're great. I mean, I love doing the big finishes. One strong scripts. Mostly, though, it's lovely to work with Peter and Janet and Sarah and Nicola again. And it's great. It's great to work with all the old guys. All your old friends.
And there's been, I think, a couple where it's just you and Peter.
Yeah.
Doctor, which is interesting because I like how they stretch out these little gaps between episodes where between the Dalek one and your last one, you could have had a bunch of they're filling in that gap.
Yeah.
And you rarely, I don't think ever in the classic series you had just two dudes, right? Like in the TARDIS, which is kind of it's an interesting dynamic to think about, especially now that the show's sort of gone in a whole bunch of different. They had a woman.
Yeah. Sure.
They're sort of leaning into some of the queer stuff with Shinagawa. So I sometimes go back to Modern Undead, and I feel like Peter Davison's Doctor is really gung-ho about getting you on the TARDIS. Even though you're sort of this questionable guy, and there's the famous scene at the end where Nis and Tegan turn at each other like,
exactly.
Is this guy coming with us? Like, and but he seems into it. I don't know if there's if you have a theory on why he was really into that idea.
No, not really. I mean, I think one of the things you do get from the episodes with Janet and Sarah and me and Peter is that I think you're quite aware that we're all good friends in reality, and we all were very good friends in reality and have remained good friends. And I think that does come across on camera and we were able to have a sense of humor, right? And we felt like a family.
You absolutely need that. The TARDIS is that crowded, as you were saying.
Yeah.
You need the chemistry between everyone.
Yeah. That's the reason I love doing Doctor Who, because I work with nice people. Yeah. And if you've got nice people in the office, you like working in the office. You've got horrible people in the office, you don't like going into the office. But I had a great team. Yeah.
So there is a line in fairly recent Doctor Who where it's pointed out that the Doctor does enjoy having redheads around. A lot of red-headed companions.
Well, I was much redder in Doctor Who than I am now.
Aggressively red.
Yes.
Well, the reason I had very red hair in Doctor Who was because in the summer in the UK, and we started filming in the summer, my hair goes very blonde, and in long shot I looked very similar to Peter. And so John Nathan Turner said, "Would I mind having all my hair cut off?" And I said, "Yes, I would mind having all my hair cut off." He said, "So would you mind if we cut it really short and dyed it a bright metallic red?" I said, "No, that's absolutely fine." I said that, but of course it did mean I was instantly recognisable in the street, which wasn't a great thing, right? I was living on a boat at the time, and I'd cycle back across the park, and kids would say, "Hi, Turner!" Because I was so recognisable.
Bright metallic red, though. I mean, it really...
And it was supposed to be a washout dye, it did not wash out, I can tell you. It just leaked on my pillow. I had ruined endless pillows in the next 2 years.
Do you have any favorite lines from your time in the show? Favorite Turlo lines?
Yes, other than me.
I'll tell you my favorite.
One of my favorite lines was in The Five Doctors when I was watching the TARDIS, and I'm going to show how old I am now. But Caroline Ford's character,
Yes,
Susan, who was in it, for those who Doctor Who Cognitive Centres was in it with the first Doctor, right, and William Hartnell. But no, we looked at the screen, and I had to say, big, isn't it? You never knew what I was looking at on the screen, really, and that was a difficult line to get out with a straight face. Yeah.
Yes, we've talked a lot on the show about how many double entendres there are.
I know.
You just go through every single episode. And I'm surprised nobody's done like a YouTube supercut of them yet.
Well, I always like the line where it was in the King's Demons.
Yeah.
You're kind of aggressive with the sword or something at the end, trying to get in the TARDIS. You're like, don't push me too far or something.
Right.
There's like a rhyme to it. I'm kind of forgetting it now, but I remember like it's the super aggressive side of Turlo that comes out all of a sudden.
I do remember the scene, but I can't remember the
or something.
I'm one of these lucky actors who doesn't remember lines. No, I mean there are some people who have these memories. Judi Dench is one of them, right? She can remember entire Shakespeare scripts, right? Soon after leaving Doctor Who, I did a play called Ibsen's Ghosts, which lasts over 3 hours, and it's a tour de force for a young actor. And I toured it in the UK. And it's an absolute horrendous memory test. The whole of the third act is this boy on stage, young man on stage with his mother, and he dies of hereditary syphilis, and he dies very painfully, and it's all terrible. But it lasts 40 minutes alone, that act, let alone the rest of the play, right? Mm-hmm. So it's this incredible tour, and I had to look at that script every day to keep it in my head. Wow. It was really stressful, the tour, because I don't have one of those memories that keeps things in for long periods. I have a very good short-term memory, which makes me an excellent television actor. Right, I can look at the scene and I can do it a minute later. And 5 minutes later, it's all gone.
So speaking of the Five Doctors, that's one of the few stories ever where the TARDIS actually ends up where it's supposed to go, right? The whole Ivory.
Yeah.
Best place in the universe, supposedly. Yeah. And then, of course, there's no story there, so you have to move on from that.
But we had a break. Yeah. That was the idea of going there. We had a nice break. So.
Yeah, the TARDIS it's sort of very weird, especially in that era, in the Davison era. Like sometimes it goes where it's supposed to go.
Sometimes
it doesn't, and the Doctor seems confident enough to give, policemen a lift in Black Orchid, and then can't just find his way to the Isle of Orion. But how did it feel, playing that role and like actually getting. Like you have some of the opening scenes in Five Doctors, right? Everyone is looking at the show on its anniversary, and you were right there. Do you feel a lot of pressure to perform for the fandom in that particular story because it was so iconic? Because you were with Susan?
No, not at all. I mean, the process of acting is you have a relationship with the person that you're acting with, and it's very difficult if sometimes that doesn't work. I worked with an actor who was cross-eyed, and so they didn't really look at me, and that, I found that incredibly difficult, because your performance is based on what you get from the other person, and you don't think about anything else except just what's happening in that scene and the drama of it. That is why science fiction is probably the most difficult genre for actors, because it's not about reality. It's about a fantasy world. And so you have to totally take that fantasy world on board. You have to believe that monster is going to kill you. If you don't, you'll look terrible because you'll look like you're a bad actor. And so it's very, very difficult to keep yourself in what has to be a reality for you, when it's miles away from anything that would happen in real life. This is I've been in a soap opera before. It was very easy acting in a soap opera because it's a real situation. Right. You don't have to manufacture anything.
Did you find it particularly difficult, like in your first few episodes, you really have to talk to that crystal?
Yeah, I mean, that sort of thing, no. If you're finding it difficult, then you're not acting well.
Right,
you shouldn't find it difficult. It should be absolutely the reality of life for you.
So how do you act against a crystal? Do you personify it in your
Yeah,
head?
well, you don't personify it. I mean, I'm not acting to the crystal. I'm trying to communicate. It's like a phone. I'm trying to communicate to someone through it. So in my head, I'm imagining the person I'm trying to communicate. Like when you dial the phone, you can imagine the person on the end of the phone. That's why phone calls to your friends are easy, and phone calls to your mum and your dad and things. They're easy to do because you know the person at the end and you can see them in your head. What's very, very difficult is cold calling people and selling stuff.
Right. Yeah.
I had the misfortune to do that for a week of my life. It's almost impossible because you have no idea who you're about to talk to. Whereas I knew I was going to talk to the Black Guardian.
Right.
So
did they have Valentine Bell's voice coming into the studio at that point, or it was just somebody reading the lines? Or?
No, I can't remember. Yeah, I'm pretty sure they did have his voice. Yes. Yeah.
Because that's a hell of a voice to communicate with.
Yeah, no, they definitely would have had Valentine's voice there for all those scenes.
Right.
Yeah.
But not necessarily the TV monitor with the... I feel like that would be hard to act with the bird on the head, and acting against that, keeping a straight face.
Just the voice, because we had a sound booth in all our studios, but particularly a lot of the monsters, the Daleks. When we worked with the Dalek voices were done in a sound booth in the studio, so that the Daleks, the people doing their voice, could see what the Dalek was doing and could react to actually what was happening.
Right.
Because things often went wrong in Doctor Who, and therefore you can't just program the Daleks, right? Mm-hmm. Something might happen, and they need to respond, right? That was the problem. We had a character when I was in Doctor Who called Chameleon, who was a robot, and the people who built Chameleon in a special effects company promised John Nathan Turner that they would build a robot that could respond and could walk and talk and whatever. Well, it's now 2024, and we haven't yet managed to build a robot at all that can walk and talk and respond, right? And of course, they didn't manage to do it, right? And so how Chameleon worked was it had a tape in it, and the tape was timed by them, and you as an actor had to work around the timings of Chameleon doing his lines. So sometimes you had to talk very quickly to get into the gap, and sometimes you had to talk incredibly slowly to fill the gap. Chameleon was a nightmare to work with.
Yes.
So
he ended up in the cupboard.
That's why when you have a robot in a film, you need somebody inside a suit, basically, right, who can react and respond in real time, like the Daleks did in Doctor Who. In real time, they were able to respond. So it's and that to get back to the cube. Yeah, I was talking to Valentine. It was very easy.
You knew it got really serious when he would appear next to you. That's what it was like, or whatever. Like, as I know, there were a few scenes that started with Crystal and ended with the two of you.
It's like, I'm going to FaceTime in. This is important.
Or beam up.
Yes. So that was, I guess, we'll wrap it up here. This will be the last question. But so that was the 20th. We've obviously had the 50th and 60th since then. Would you ever consider coming back for a 70th?
I'd always consider coming back to Doctor Who. I mean, I am a producer these days, but I do really like acting, and I miss acting. I didn't when I became a producer. I started producing natural history films, and I wanted to save the world. I was very worried about the environment, and I have no regrets about my life at all. The only regret I have is that I really enjoy acting and haven't done enough of it. And I'd love to go back to acting. So I'm coming to that point in my. I'm a producer now. I shouldn't say this, but I've made so many hundreds of hours of television that, like any job, right? I've been doing it 30 odd years. 30, over 30 years. I could do with doing a bit more acting, a bit less producing. But there you go.
Nice to take a break from whatever it is your job is.
Yeah.
Well, I definitely want to see that Turlo as a dictator storyline.
Absolutely.
Right? That's amazing. So hopefully they can get that going at least before the 70th. Mark, it's been fantastic. Thank you so much.
Pleasure meeting the two of you.
Yes, thank you, Mark.
Okay.
John Peel, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for inviting me.
And, first of all, we wanted to talk a little bit about the new season of Doctor Who. I don't know if you've watched all of it.
I haven't watched any of it.
Oh, wow.
Any of it. No. I'm one of those terrible people who waits for the DVDs to come out and sits and binges.
All right. Do you know what's happened at all? You don't.
I've got some stuff from online, of course. You can't avoid it.
Right. So you're aware that Susan is mentioned. and you, I believe, you brought Susan back in the novels.
Right.
Do you think that she should be brought back in the show? Or
Yes, why not?
Yeah.
I mean, that's one of the great things about Doctor Who is you can do almost anything. And suddenly saying, hey, let's bring someone back. Why not? It sounds like fun. As long as they've got a good story.
Right.
That's the only proviso I would have. Have a good story, let's do it.
Have there been times the show has brought things back, perhaps, that was not a good story and probably not a great idea?
No, not that I can think of. Most of them have been a lot of fun, actually. And it's really nice when we got, actually, it wasn't the last season, was it? It was a few seasons ago. But when they brought various people back, and we brought Mel back and what have you. Yeah, it's fun. I mean, Doctor Who's got this wonderful history. So it's kind of nice to nod in the direction of the people who've created the show for so long.
Right.
So you wrote the first new adventure, I believe, right?
Right,
Time Worm
yes.
Genesis. So that was, quite a step of stepping into sort of new territory for Doctor Who at the time. I mean, it had been put on hiatus, and that's euphemism for being canceled. Really.
Yes.
I remember awaiting it coming back when they said it was on hiatus, and we kept waiting and waiting and waiting. But then it's like, well, we're going to continue these adventures in some form, and they decided to go with novels. And then you were tasked with the first one there. Can you bring me back to that zone and sort of?
Well, I wasn't actually tasked. I kept pushing myself very hard to say, please, 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 let me do one. So it was a lot of pushing on my behalf, and a lot of understanding on Peter Darwell-Evans' half. But yes, I was brought in very early on the planning stages. So a lot of what came about was a result of my talking with Peter and saying, can we do this? Can we do that? Are we doing this? Should we do that? This kind of thing. So it was tremendously exciting. We were getting... Peter looked at it as his chance to do his season, if you wish, of Doctor Who, which is why he did it as a 4-part story.
Right.
And he was really keen on separating it from the TV show. Not totally separating it, of course, but just enough. Make it more adult, more vital. And...
I'm curious, were there rules sort of right at the beginning? There was sort of famously a sort of new adventure Bible that formed over time, or was that
formed over time? What happened was when I started, there was something like a 3-page outline, and that was it. And then everything else after that was discussions. So I would say to Peter, "Is this okay?" And he would think about it and say, "Well, let's try it." We had a lot of that in the story. It was, well, let's try it and see. And if it worked, it worked. If it didn't, we went back and tried something different. But it was very experimental. I mean, we really didn't quite know what we were doing.
And you learned by doing it.
Well, yes, that's the only way to do it, really. You just throw yourself in and see whether you sink or swim, kind of thing.
Have you read most of them? Or
I read about the first 30 odd or something like that, but then they were coming out faster than I could read them.
I know.
So
I remember.
It was at a very busy time in my career. I was writing a lot of books at that point, and as a result of which I got a bit behind, and then I got a lot behind, and then all of a sudden, wait a minute, what's going on?
I'm still behind. But I'm curious, obviously, famously, some of the books and elements of the books got brought into the new series at various points, Human Nature being the most famous example. Do you think of any stories that were really just kind of like absolute bangers in the books that you think might be really good if they would realize those in some form in the new series or in the series at all? It's not really a new series anymore. I keep saying
I don't know. I mean, I'm kind of the opinion that the book shouldn't be too easy to film, because if they were filmable, there should be scripts. The whole point with a book is you can do things that you can't do on TV. And that was one of the aims we were doing from the very beginning, was to do things they really couldn't do on TV. And I think transferring them to TV afterwards, you'd have to tone them down, reorganize them, refocus the storylines.
Start thinking about the number of sets and
I think most of them should be left as they are, and people given a chance to write new stories. I mean, that's part of the fun of it all, is all the new stories all the time.
Yeah. Well, it was at a time when, as you suggested, there wasn't really canon in the way that people talk about canon these days, right? It was just written on the back of a napkin. People cared about it less. And I believe you also did the novelization of Evil of the Daleks, was it?
Yeah.
Which was the first novelization that the BBC was in charge of rather than Target?
Well, I don't know if it was the first one, but they used to do the Target novels, obviously.
Yes.
And then there were the New Adventures. And then the BBC started commissioning some novel. I don't know exactly how that worked, but I know it wasn't a Target novel.
Right.
And I found it interesting because when Evil of the Daleks came out, it was thicker than your average Target novel. So it seems like when you wrote that novelization, you might have taken advantage of fans being used to the New Adventures, and definitely you didn't set out to write a Target novel. So can you tell us a little bit about what you set out to do?
The Target novels were before the New Adventures.
Yeah.
The New Adventures came after Evil. In fact, I was writing Evil when I was asked to start thinking about the Time Worm Genesis. So I was still working on Evil at the point. But Peter was wonderful with certainly with Power and Evil, because I said, well, these are long stories. They shouldn't be 128-page, very large type. And he agreed with me, and he just said, do it the way you think you should do it. Peter was very good at that. Well, I mean, once he had decided somebody was going to do a book, he let them do it. He didn't get in the way. Yes. And he did this with everyone, I think, which is why he managed to bring in new talent and everything, because he gave them a chance to really tell the stories they wanted. Without being pushed too much into a format. And he had done that with me, which was really very helpful in many ways. And with Evil, he just sort of said, write it. There was no page count given or anything. He just said, write it. And then I sat down and wrote what I thought the book needed, which was great.
So there was no difference in terms of the BBC publishing it, right? There was no BBC guardians coming in and saying, you can do this, you can't do that.
At the time, the BBC figured Doctor Who was dead. So we were really given carte blanche. They would let us do anything we wanted because they didn't care. Honestly, I don't think they even bothered reading them, to be truthful. If they did, they probably would have had a heart attack.
Do you, so you watched some of the new show?
Yes, of course,
later season. But I mean, what are your thoughts overall about how it plays now compared to the classic show? Do you think there are elements missing from the classic show that should be brought back, or anything like that?
It's a different feel completely. The show began as a children-friendly family show, and it was written so that everybody in the family could watch it. Towards the end of the McCoy years, I think it got to the point where it was mostly aimed at the older viewers, and the younger viewers had been lost out, which is why the ratings went down, really, because the younger people couldn't quite get the access to it that they used to be able to. And when the show came back in 2005, that was one of the things that they aimed at again, was write it again for families, and bring back material for the younger readers, like the farting aliens and what have you.
Yes.
And it was a different approach. And if you're used to writing Sylvester McCoy, writing for the new season is not quite the same thing somehow. But I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing, because you have to change. That's one of the reasons why Doctor Who's survived so long, is because it's not always the same thing every week.
Right.
And I remember when Jodie came in, her first season, I was absolutely blown away. I thought it was the best show I'd seen since like 1963, because it was so well written, so well acted. There was a group feeling to it, the family concept. And I like that.
Interesting.
I think it went downhill a little after that. But at that time, that first Jodie season, I just loved it. It was wonderful.
Were there any standouts for you? Maybe Rosa?
Rosa, certainly. Kablam, I enjoyed tremendously. They were all fun shows. They were all different. And I think this is what we need, really, is each time just coming in and doing something new. And that's part of the appeal, I think, of recasting the Doctor every few years. Because you've got this different kind of energy. Each lead actor has their own kind of energy, their own approach to the role. And I think that inspires the writers to go, oh, I can play with that character. Writers love nothing more than being given the opportunity to write something interesting for someone they've got a feel for. And, I'd love to come back occasionally and say, oh, I'd like to write a story for that one, or I'd like to write something here, because it appeals to me. And that's one of the great things about Doctor Who. If you don't like what's happening right at this minute, wait 6 months, something else will come up instead.
Yeah.
And that's part of it. That's part of the huge energy of Doctor Who, really.
Yeah.
What sort of adventure do you think you would take to, or type of? And what I mean by that is that Doctor Who occasionally has some big sort of continuity busting adventures or epic tales. Certainly those happen. But then there's ones like you mentioned, like Kerblam, that are just sort of more interesting one-offs, but really saying something and doing something cool. Where do you stand on that? Would you like to do something like huge, like Evil of the Daleks, or something more like a standalone?
I like both. It just depends on my mood at the moment. I mean, my latest project was a Doctor Who audio for BBC, and it's a Sixth Doctor adventure with Perry. A combination I'd never written before, so I thought, oh, okay, this is fun, and it's a very small story. It's just a very individual story, just one-off, completely unrelated to anything else in Doctor Who history.
What's it called?
It's called The River of Death.
River of Death,
and it's about the first expedition down the Colorado River into the Grand Canyon, which is obviously historically as accurate as I could make it within terms of the story. But that's all it is. It's just a little adventure story. After doing, Dalek invasions and things, it's kind of nice to do a little adventure story, which is just mostly about the characters rather than about universe-shattering events. So this is again, going back to what I was saying earlier, this is part of the appeal of Doctor Who. You can do a big story, which can be an arc, or you could do a little individual tale, which just makes you feel for various characters in the story, like Rosa. I mean, that's part of Doctor Who, really. You can do these things. It doesn't have to just be one format, one big blockbuster or whatever.
But you did write a book, I remember.
Oh, yes, the Gallifrey Chronicles.
Gallifrey Chronicles.
Yeah.
Which I actually have it. And I remember you went a little bit back and forth on recapping things, but also being clear when you were speculating about things like Time Lord biology, things. I found a lot of that very interesting. But I also thought it's an interesting thing to look at because it came out on like 1988 or whatever it was. And I feel like now everyone is like the fandom has evolved so much. Everyone's doing speculation. People are taking that speculation and turning it into podcasts, and then those podcasts interact with the show itself. And there's this whole thing where that sort of commentary has kind of evolved. It seemed like you were kind of on the cutting edge of this evolution of fandom. I just wonder, what do you think? Like, sort of looking back on that as kind of maybe the first venture into it. I feel like Doctor Who was much more careful about that sort of thing, and a lot of franchises were back in the day.
Yeah, I originally came out of fandom, of course, in the early days, and so I mean, I have a lot of the kind of fanish desire to make things work and to make continuity work. And that's why I was writing the Gallifrey Chronicles, was to try and put it into some kind of a framework that makes sense. Because when they also, the original writers were doing the shows, they weren't sitting there thinking, well, how does this fit into Doctor Who continuity? They were just going, oh, wow, I've got a great idea for a Doctor Who story, And when I was working on the Doctor Who and the Daleks book with Terry Nation, I was sitting down to work out a Dalek continuity, and Terry just laughed at me and he said, hey, good luck with that. I never thought about it. I just wrote the stories, And then, of course, that's what they have to do. They're not there just to sit trying to work out continuity points. Whereas, when you're a fan, that's the kind of thing you really enjoy doing. So I did a bit of each.
Yeah, it's sort of treating these stories as puzzle pieces, right?
Yeah.
It's almost a different thing from the enjoyment of story, right? Almost.
Right.
It's a 4D puzzle.
Yeah, it really is. Do you, out of the new Doctors, you mentioned that, they were slightly different characters. Is there any that you would prefer to write for, or like you?
Well, as really I say, Jodie.
Yeah,
I really like Jodie. I would have enjoyed that.
She's back doing big finishes now. So
that's right.
You
could do a chance.
Could do. And the thing is, all of the Doctor Who actors, the lead actors, have all been very interesting in various ways. And you look at them and you go, yeah, I can make use of that. I could do something with that concept and, the way that Doctor is working. And, if I were asked, I would probably jump in at any of them. I mean, it wouldn't worry me. I would just go, okay, watch a few episodes. Yep, got back in the frame of mind, and plow on with it. It would be fun. Because there's always something in there to enjoy. To really have fun with. Even in the bad episodes, you could find something that you're going to find. If somebody mentions one story and says I hated it, you can find 6 other people who will love it, and one person who it's their absolute favorite episode ever. Because we're different people. We look for different things in the different stories. And different parts of it appeal to each of us.
Doctor Who can be served in so many different flavors. Or
there's something for everybody. It's like the old joke about the weather. Wait 5 minutes, it'll change. But Doctor Who does change, and that's part of what makes it work. It wouldn't have lasted this long if it was a rigid format, because that would kill it. Eventually you'd run out of stories to tell in any kind of format. Whereas if you're changing the actor, changing the route of the show, I guess, the way that it's going, then you can constantly keep it fresh. You can bring new things in, introduce new concepts that haven't been done before, bring back old ones that have been done, and maybe not for a long time. Which is why, going back to one of the earlier questions, why it's fun to bring some companions back after years. Just so see what they would be like in this situation.
Yes, particularly new and old companions in the same story.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Well, I think
I think that's been great. Thank you, John.